Chapter 2026. Zhang Henin took Jie Ming to the room she rented. It wasn't a big room with 2 bedrooms and a living room, but it was very clean. The whole style was very similar to the home Jie Ming had lived in for 2 years. His mood softened slightly. Looking at Zhang Henin, who was busy in the kitchen, Jie Ming even thought that maybe he was a little too much. The ingredients and whatnot had been prepared long ago. Jie Ming didn't finish watching a program, but he heard Zhang Henin calling him to eat. The table was full of about 10 dishes, including cold dishes. Jie Ming glanced over, almost all of them were his favorite dishes. He looked at the woman sitting opposite him, who was opening the red wine with gentle eyes, and the trace of guilt in his heart became stronger. Why not? Why don't you give her some money before she leaves? Zhang Henin looked at him with a rare gentle gaze. She was stunned for a moment, and her hand movements subconsciously stopped. What's wrong? A trace of hesitation flashed in her eyes. Jie Ming shook his head, thinking that it would be better to talk to her later. Nothing. Zhang Henin lowered her eyes and said, "Oh." She opened the red wine cork and poured a glass for Jie Ming. When she handed it over, Jie Ming noticed her hand. It was very white, and it was extra beautiful against the red wine glass. Zhang Henin raised the wine glass and raised it to him. Come, Jie Ming, sacrifice to our past. The word sacrifice stunned Jie Ming for a moment. He also raised the wine glass and drank the red wine in the glass. The atmosphere between the two was the most harmonious in a while. Jie Ming ate the familiar dishes, his heart was filled with emotions. Henin, let me tell you. He didn't finish his words, but suddenly he felt a little dizzy. Jie Ming thought that he had been too tired and didn't have enough rest during this period, but the dizziness was getting stronger and stronger. The moment before he lost consciousness, he saw Zhang Henin's sneering face. Gu Xingyin was shocked when he received the system notification. What did you say? Zhang Henin drugged Jie Ming with the intention to hurt him. Gu Xingyin was a little surprised, but after thinking carefully, he felt that it was expected. System, simulate a number and call the police. Gu Xingyin pondered for a moment and said. She didn't know what Zhang Henin wanted to do, but since she knew, she couldn't just let it go. The system responded. The police in Yunhai City received a strange phone call. The voice on the phone said that someone in room 1203 of XX district had knocked someone out with the intention of hurting them. That person didn't reveal any additional information. What was strange was that when the police checked the number of the person who called the police, it showed that there was no such person. Although they weren't sure if the news was true, the police still immediately sent out officers to take action. However, when they arrived at Zhang Henin's residence, they were still a little late. She used the kitchen knife to cut off Jie Ming's 10 fingers, as well as his manhood. If the police had come any later, Zhang Henin's next target would have been Jie Ming's neck. When she saw the police arrive, other than the initial panic, she quickly calmed down. However, she looked at Jie Ming with pity. If she had known, she would have acted faster. The 2 police officers were experienced, but when they saw Jie Ming's miserable state, their faces still turned green. This was no longer a simple murder, it was simply perverted. Chapter 2027. The next day, the news was leaked on the internet. There were no photos, and there was no description of who it was. It only mentioned that there was a perverted assault case in a certain neighborhood, and the victim's tragic condition was mentioned in a few words. Although it was only a few words, it still made people who saw this news feel cold all over. Gu Xingyin saw this news. Her gaze deepened. She did not expect Zhang Henin, this woman, to be so ruthless when she wanted to. Cin Yuye also saw this news. He was the kind of person who was very well informed, and the fact that Jie Ming's ex-girlfriend vented her anger on him was no longer a secret in their circle. It was just that this kind of thing was too bloody. Except for the shock at the beginning, everyone tacitly chose not to talk about it. Seeing Gu Xingyin browsing this website silently, Sun Yuya thought she was afraid. He walked over and held her hand. Hanin, don't be afraid. Gu Xingyin opened her hand and held him back. I'm not afraid. I just feel that woman is too crazy. It was indeed crazy. An ordinary woman would never do such a thing. Sun Yuya also frowned. It said that someone called the police, which saved Jie Ming's life. He was obviously a little worried, thinking that it was fortunate that the woman didn't target Hanin. Gu Xingyin didn't say anything else. She just grabbed Sun Yuya's hand and leaned on his shoulder. Jie Ming's luck was still good. Because it hadn't been cut off for long, his finger could still be barely reattached. But the symbol of a man, perhaps Zhang Hanin was too emotional when she did it at that time. Not only did she cut it off, but she even cut it a few times to vent her anger. All in all, the result was, Jie Ming was no longer a normal man. It was said that in Jie Ming's ward, the sound of cursing could be heard every day. The nurse in charge of him was a little impatient, but at the same time, she understood and sympathized with him. Any man who encountered such a thing would probably break down, right? In the blink of an eye, more than a month had passed. Jie Ming quieted down a lot and slowly stopped cursing. He seemed to have accepted this fact, but his eyes were shrouded in a layer of gloominess. However, the bigger blow was still to come. When the hospital did a routine evaluation for him, he tested positive for HIV. A bolt from the blue. Therefore, Jie Ming, who could have gone home to recuperate, was quarantined. According to his description, the hospital immediately targeted Jie Ming's new girlfriend, a girl named Yanzi. Sure enough, that extremely pure swallow was, in fact, a high-class prostitute. She once worked in a high-class club for 5 years. Later on, she went out on her own and targeted the young and promising men there. He couldn't tell where she got the disease from. To everyone's surprise, when Jie Ming heard the news, he wasn't even as excited as when he woke up from his coma. He seemed to accept this fact very easily and accepted the hospital treatment very quietly. Even the doctors, who had seen all kinds of strange things, had a trace of pity in their tone when talking about Jie Ming. This man was really unlucky. First, he had lost his dignity as a man. Now, he was going to lose his life. Chapter 2028. Jie Ming was completely silent now. Sometimes, he didn't say a word for the whole day and just sat there alone. After a while, he applied to be discharged from the hospital. The hospital couldn't force the patient to stay. In addition, Jie Ming's body seemed to be fine at the moment, so he quickly went through the discharge procedures. Jie Ming returned home and made a lot of phone calls. First, he went to see his girlfriend. Yanzi was having a good time in the bar. When she saw Jie Ming, she even smiled and said hello. She didn't look sorry at all. People like them often had several different ideas. Some people began to plan the rest of their lives after lamenting their bad luck. They would go to places they wanted to go but had never been, play games they wanted to play but had never dared to play, and make up for the regrets as much as possible. It was also a kind of responsibility for life. But there was a group of people who began to feel unbalanced when they learned that they had such a shameful disease and could die at any time. On the one hand, they complained about the unfair world that let them contract such a disease. On the other hand, they began to take revenge on society. They completely let go of the moral shackles and turned themselves into the kind of people they used to hate the most. Yanzi was the latter. After knowing that she had contracted this disease, she began to complain about the unfairness of fate. After that, it was a completely broken pot. She couldn't remember how many men she had slept with without using condoms. Every time she saw the satisfied look of those men, she would have a kind of revenge pleasure. Do you feel good? Ha ha ha, you don't know that the woman you just slept with has AIDS. When she saw Jie Ming, she didn't feel guilty at all. If this man didn't covet her beauty, how could he sleep with her? Jia Ming didn't say anything. He threw a stack of money and asked her to stay with him for another night. Yanzi showed a meaningful smile. She thought that Jia Ming would drink with her, so she began to prepare to break the pot. At this time, she still didn't know what had happened to Jia Ming. If she knew, she wouldn't dare to go home with him even if she had 10 times the courage. At 3:30 in the morning, Jia Ming drove out of the house with a cold look. He found a bar and drank all night. In the morning, he drove to the prison. He went to see Zhang Henin. Zhang Henin was wearing a blue prison uniform. Her hair was cut short and there was no makeup on her body. She looked a lot more haggard. That's right. Life in prison is much harder than outside. Seeing Jia Ming, Zhang Henin laughed nervously. Jia Ming, how does it feel to be castrated? Ha 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 ha, let me tell you, Zhang Henin, don't regret it at all, ha 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 ha. Jia Ming also revealed a smile. I know you don't have a good relationship with your parents, but you have a younger sister that you love very much, he said gloomily to Zhang Henin. Zhang Henin, you've been secretly transferring money to your sister all these years. Your biggest goal is to buy a house in C City for your sister and bring her over. Zhang Henin's expression suddenly became uneasy. Jia Ming was still smiling. Your dream will never come true. Zhang Henin, your sister disappeared from school yesterday. He looked at Zhang Henin's widened eyes and laughed as if he was taking revenge. Chapter 2029. Do you know where she has gone? Zhang Henin looked at him with a frightened expression. Jia Ming just smiled and said, she was abducted and sold to a remote mountain village that didn't even have a road. The people there have never left the mountain village in their lives. Countless single men can't get a wife. Sharing a wife is a very normal thing. The young girls who are abducted and sold there can't live more than 2 years. They are tortured. He looked at Zhang Henin with a trace of madness in his eyes. Zhang Henin, you ruined me. I won't let you have a good life. No, not only you, but also the people you care about. I won't let them have a good life. Zhang Henin looked frightened. No, you can't do this. Jia Ming, you can't do this. Jia Ming smiled. No, I can. He couldn't live anymore. What else couldn't he do? Zhang Henin suddenly pressed the alarm frantically. But before the police arrived, Jia Ming had already taken out a gun from his pocket. Don't struggle, Zhang Henin. I said that even if I die, I won't let go of those who made me like this. Bang! When the police arrived, they saw Zhang Henin lying in a pool of blood and Jia Ming pointing the gun at them. I'll turn myself in, he said calmly. Then, he pulled the trigger. No one was able to stop him in time before the man ended his life. 2 days later, the police received a call. A resident said that there was a foul smell coming from next door. No one had come in or out. When the police opened the door, they thought that the policewoman had vomited. The whole living room was covered in blood. The woman was brutally killed on the sofa. Her body was slashed countless times. Her body was twisted strangely. Her limbs were cut off and thrown aside. Her eyes were wide open in disbelief. It was summer. The air conditioner was not turned on in the house. The smell inside was imaginable. The police soon solved the case. The murderer was Jia Ming, who committed suicide 2 days ago. And the woman he killed was his girlfriend. The reason he killed her was simple. The woman had AIDS and infected him. All in all, it was a bad debt. Gu Xingyin only knew the news after the police solved the case. Her focus had always been on Zhang Henin and she had neglected Jia Ming. Based on her understanding of Jia Ming, he shouldn't be such a crazy person. Perhaps, he had really been forced to the brink of collapse. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but shudder when she thought about all the things that had happened to her recently. Then, she was pulled into a warm embrace. Don't be afraid. Tsunyuya hugged her tightly with heartache, as if this could give her unlimited strength. As long as I'm here, I won't let anyone hurt you, he whispered in her ear. Gu Xingyin nodded. After thinking for a while, she reached out to hold his hand and gently placed it on her lower abdomen. And our children? Tsunyuya, he was silent for a while before he finally understood what Gu Xingyin meant. The heavy atmosphere just now was swept away, and nothing else mattered anymore. He looked at Gu Xingyin. His voice was a little unsteady. His hand was still on her stomach. Henin, you mean, we have a child? Chapter 20:30. Tsunyuya, this man, was always calm and composed at all times. This was the first time Gu Xingyin had seen him lose his composure. I'm so happy. I'm really so happy. Tsunyuya couldn't stop smiling. I'll tell our parents this good news. Tsunyuya quickly took out his phone and was about to make a call. He glanced at Gu Xingyin and deliberately walked away, muttering that radiation was bad for pregnant women and the fetus. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She silently looked at the phone in her hand. On the other side, Tsunyuya had already called both parents in an extremely excited and proud tone. In just half an hour, the two elders of the Tsun family and Mrs. Xie rushed over. As for Mr. Xie, he still had something to do at the company and would only come back to see his daughter at night. The family looked at Gu Xingyin as if they were looking at a big treasure. Gu Xingyin sat on the sofa and listened to her two mothers nagging her about some things to take note of. Her mother-in-law, Mrs. Tsun, was even more swift and decisive. After hearing that her daughter-in-law was pregnant, she immediately called an old friend of hers and had already booked an aunt for her daughter-in-law to take care of pregnant women. Mrs. Xie said that she would set off tomorrow to a very effective Buddha mountain to ask for a protective talisman for her daughter. Gu Xingyin listened to her mother's teachings with a mysterious smile on her face. When the elders left at night, she finally couldn't help but hold her forehead. She looked at Tsunyuya, who was washing fruits for her, and complained, "You don't know, but our mother thinks I'm fragile." Tsunyuya lovingly stuffed a freshly peeled apple into her mouth and said with a smile, "Don't be fooled by our mother's words. She's much more nervous than you are." He blinked and whispered, "My mother even came to chat with me just now. She said that pregnant women are fickle and I can't make you angry. I have to go along with everything you say." Gu Xingyin burst out laughing. Seeing that she didn't seem to have any psychological pressure, Tsunyuya was relieved. He said with an aggrieved expression, "If you ask me, our mother doesn't believe her biological son at all. When did I make Henin angry? You've always followed my orders, haven't you?" Gu Xingyin reached out and gently hammered him. "Don't talk nonsense." Tsunyuya knew when to stop. He smiled and held his wife's hand as they sat on the sofa. "I'm not poor. My entire life's worth of flowery words have all fallen on Henin." Gu Xingyin glanced at him and didn't say anything. She just ate the fruit casually. Soon, he felt a little sleepy. Tsunyuya saw that her eyelids were about to close and gently shook her hand. "Henin. If you're sleepy, let's go to bed." Gu Xingyin didn't want to move at all. She mumbled something that Tsunyuya couldn't hear clearly. He sighed, bent down, picked her up, and gently placed her on the bed in the bedroom. Then, he lay down next to her. Gu Xingyin naturally turned over and rolled into his arms. Tsunyuya saw her actions and was a little worried. As a first-time father, he was always afraid. Then, he saw his wife's eyes open under the warm wall lamp. She wasn't asleep. Just as Tsunyuya was wondering, he felt an arm around his waist. Then, he heard his wife's gentle voice. "Yuya, hubby, I didn't tell you that I like you the most. I love you the most." Tsunyuya's body trembled. For the first time, she told him without reservation that she loved him. A smile appeared on Sinyuye's face. He lowered his head and kissed his wife's forehead. Yes, I know. I love you too. Chapter 2031. Xie Han and Sinyuye had lived a happy life together. When they were old, Sinyuye had brought Gu Xingyin to an island in the west. The people here believe in their God, believing that their Almighty God can fulfill all their wishes. At that time, his hair had turned white and his face was full of wrinkles. However, when he looked at his wife, his eyes were filled with tenderness and love. I never believed in these worries. However, when I was old, I changed my mind. He held his wife's hand and bowed solemnly to the huge statue. I hope that in the next life, I can still find you and become husband and wife with you. At this time, Gu Xingyin had become a kind old lady. She held her husband's hand tightly and smiled happily. I will also find you. Fate would not let them go far away. When she opened her eyes again, Gu Xingyin's eyes were peaceful. She glanced at the system. The system immediately understood her thoughts. The host can continue to try. Gu Xingyin felt the power in her body. She was unprecedentedly confident. She could sense that she was only one step away from that realm. She stretched out her right hand and drew a line in the air beside her. A pitch-black crack suddenly appeared in front of Gu Xingyin. She stepped in without hesitation. It was the same scene she had seen before. The pressure from the space-time crack fell on Gu Xingyin's body. However, she did not care and slowly walked forward step by step. There was no fixed route here. She could only rely on herself to walk forward slowly. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, Gu Xingyin did not know how far she had walked. It felt like only a short period of time, yet it also felt like thousands of years had passed. She could only feel the pressure on her body growing stronger and stronger. It had reached the point where she could not bear it anymore. As long as she took a step back, the feeling of exploding pressure would disappear. However, this was far from the limit. Her footsteps became very slow. However, her gaze became more and more determined. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. Her determined gaze seemed to shine. It was here. Her strong intuition told her that this was the final destination. She took a deep breath and resisted the enormous pressure coming from the endless cracks. She suddenly stretched out her hand and slashed forward. A huge crack appeared in front of her eyes. In front of Gu Xingyin, countless dazzling white lights seemed to appear. Within the white light, she saw a figure in green robes. He seemed to be very far away, out of reach, but also very close. Gu Xingyin could even see the cloud patterns embroidered on his green robe. In just a moment, her tears fell. She knew it was him. She couldn't take another step forward. She could only pray that the person knew that she was looking at him and turned around to look at her. Perhaps because this thought was too strong, that person seemed to have sensed something. His body suddenly moved, and then he slowly turned his head. However, before Gu Xingyin could see his appearance, the space behind her seemed to have sensed a huge and terrifying existence and suddenly collapsed inch by inch. "Host, come back quickly." The system's anxious voice suddenly appeared in her mind. An irresistible force pulled Gu Xingyin. In the next moment, she was brought back to the pure white space. Chapter 2032. Gu Xingyin glanced at his surroundings, feeling a little lost. But the next moment, she came to her senses. She looked at the system and said happily, "System, I see him." A white light flashed on the system. "Congratulations, host." Gu Xingyin then asked, "System, did you pull me back just now?" The system's white light flashed. "Detected that the host is in danger and forcibly brought you back." At this moment, Gu Xingyin was completely grateful to the system. In that situation just now, if it weren't for the system, she would have insisted on waiting there until she saw that person's face. But under the situation of the space-time crack collapsing, could she really escape unscathed? Now that she could see him, as long as she completed a few more missions and gained more power, sooner or later, she would be able to rely on her own power to break free from the shackles of the space-time crack and truly step into the place where he was. System, begin to transfer to the next world. Yes, host. This was a very beautiful garden. The sun was shining brightly in the morning, and many of the flowers in the garden were in full bloom. A girl who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old was hanging on a swing, laughing non-stop. Another girl who looked to be about the same age was reading an original book under the flower rack on the other side. Gu Xingyin raised her head. If someone saw at this moment, they would be surprised to find that the girl reading the book and the girl playing on the swing looked exactly the same. Yes, they were twins. And this time, Gu Xingyin had transmigrated into the body of her elder sister, Su Jian. And the girl playing on the swing was Su Jian's twin sister, Su Jiao. The two daughters of the Su family were very famous in Xia City. Not to mention their rich family background, both of them were as beautiful as flowers. At a young age, they had already revealed their looks that could topple cities. However, one of them was active and the other was quiet. The elder sister, Su Jian, was like a secluded orchid living by the water in an empty valley, while the younger sister, Su Jiao, was like a gorgeous red peony blooming in the mountains. Many of the young masters of Xia City were secretly thinking about who would win the heart of the two sisters when they grew up. Sister. Come here and give me a push. Gu Xingyin raised her head. Su Jiao was probably tired from playing alone, so she started to act coquettishly towards her sister. She slowly closed the book, but had no intention of going over. Ever since she was young, Su Jian had always thought that she was the older sister and that she should spoil her younger sister. She had always given in to Su Jiao since she was young. Thus, Su Jiao developed the habit of asking her sister for help no matter what happened. Under such a one-sided situation, the relationship between the two sisters was indeed very good. They were inseparable from each other since they were young. Su Jian had once naively thought that they would be together forever. However, she had never expected that her younger sister would push her out as a scapegoat after she got into trouble while fooling around. Su Jiao had enjoyed the feeling of being praised by everyone since she was a child. She was good-looking and knew how to dress up. Since junior high school, she had received an endless stream of love letters and confessions. Of course, she had a boyfriend since junior high. In the 3 years of junior high school and high school, Su Jiao had changed boyfriends countless times. Actually, she didn't love those people. She just enjoyed the feeling of being pampered and loved. When it came to relationships between men and women, Su Jiao was even more free and easy. In junior high school, she had already given away her virginity. Chapter 2033. After she became an adult, she became even more unscrupulous. Su Jiao often had several boyfriends at the same time. According to her own words, she enjoyed the feeling of being loved and the pleasure of sex. After she entered university, she became even more unscrupulous. She even participated in various parties with a group of playful friends. The Su family's parents had also heard of Su Jiao's reputation, but they only thought that their younger daughter was playful. They didn't expect her to be so playful. Su Jian was completely different from Su Jiao. She was almost the model of a rich family's daughter in Xia City. She always got first place in her exams when she was young and was proficient in piano, violin, and ballet. In high school, she was recognized as the top student in Campus Bell. After she entered university, she became the goddess of the top school in the country. When she was in school, she wasn't affected by her younger sister's reputation. Because the two sisters didn't even go to the same school. They were both elite schools, but Su Jian went to the kind of private school that required both money and ability. The management was especially strict. If Su Jiao went to that kind of school, she probably wouldn't be able to take more than a week and would complain about dropping out. Moreover, with her terrible grades, the school wouldn't accept her at all. Su Jiao went to the kind of elite school that everyone else knew. As long as one had money, the school dared to accept them. Moreover, the teachers didn't dare to control them too much. With a group of second-generation heirs in there, it was enough to imagine what kind of foul atmosphere it was. As they grew older, more and more disagreements appeared between the two sisters. Su Jian was a very self-disciplined person. She had a strict life plan and had been working hard to achieve it. She had heard of her younger sister's reputation and had advised her before. The two of them even parted on bad terms because of this. But even so, in Su Jian's eyes, her younger sister was still the one who needed her care and love. However, this younger sister didn't see her elder sister in this way. In the eyes of Su Jiao, who was becoming more and more rebellious, her elder sister Su Jian was a hypocrite. She put on a disguise and easily gained everyone's favor. Especially when others talked about the daughter of the Su family, they were full of praise for Su Jian. Moreover, Su Jiao felt that Su Jian's thinking was very old-fashioned. What did she mean by having feelings for each other before dating and being unwilling to develop a relationship? Come on, what era was this? Did she really think that she was a lady from a wealthy family living in ancient times? Once upon a time, a group of disreputable friends had asked Su Jiao to call her sister to play together. Su Jiao had said casually, "She's so boring. She's so old and still an old virgin. Why are you calling her?" He did not hide his disdain at all. Su Jian was completely unaware of this. Su Jiao was still playing casually. As the saying goes, if you often walk by the river, how can your shoes not get wet? As she played around, she finally provoked a man that she couldn't afford to provoke. The leader of some underground organization. According to Su Jiao's character, of course, she would leave after sleeping with him. However, he was interested in her and refused to let her go easily. While the two sides were entangled, Su Jiao happened to see the man's gun under his pillow. She suddenly realized that this was someone she couldn't afford to provoke. In a moment of desperation, she gave Su Jian's name and said that her family would be worried since she hadn't been home for the whole night. She wanted to go home first and ask that man to look for her again after some time. Chapter 2034. But the address she gave was Su Jian's first university. On the third day of school, Su Jian was on her way home when she was knocked unconscious and taken to a strange place. What followed was a period of extremely dark days. According to what the man said, this was a punishment for being disobedient. From what Su Jian knew, she never knew that there were so many ways to humiliate and torture people in this world. She didn't know that this man was caused by her sister, Su Jiao, and thought that he was after the Su family. Finally, after enduring for more than a week, Su Jian found an opportunity. She escaped, dialed 110, and called home. Before she could escape, she was discovered. She was forced to the rooftop of the 6th floor, and then jumped down without hesitation as the man laughed coldly. When the Su family and the police arrived, they saw a lifeless body lying in a pool of blood. The man had already escaped, leaving behind a scapegoat. But how could the Su family let it go? This case shocked the entire Xia city, and even the whole country. The underground organization, which had been powerful in the neighboring province for several years, was uprooted overnight. The Su family finally knew why their quiet and obedient eldest daughter had suffered such an unexpected disaster. It turned out that this wasn't an unexpected disaster, but a diversion of the trouble. Mrs. Su, who had always doted on her daughter, slapped Su Jiao and pointed at the door, telling her to get lost. Su Jiao never thought that she would cause such a big scene, but obviously, there was no way to change the established result. The day after she was kicked out of the house, the Su family held a press conference and hired a lawyer to cut ties with Su Jiao. From then on, Su Jiao and the Su family of Xia City had nothing to do with each other. They couldn't face this daughter who had killed her own sister. In just half a month, the Su family had cut ties with 2 daughters, 1 dead. Outsiders speculated about the reason, but the person involved never appeared in front of the public again. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses. Su Jiao, who was sitting on the swing opposite her, was getting impatient. "Sister, come over quickly." Gu Xingyin's lips curled into a not-so-warm smile. She raised her voice and said, "I'm a little tired from reading. I'm going back to sleep for a while." After saying that, she stood up with the book in her arms and ignored Su Jiao. Su Jiao was left alone on the swing, frowning. "Sister, it seems that something is wrong." Gu Xingyin walked into the house. There was a woman in a plain dress arranging flowers in the living room. "It's so beautiful." Gu Xingyin praised sincerely as he walked up to her. The beautiful woman raised her head and revealed a joyful smile. "Yan Yan, do you think it's beautiful?" Obviously, the praise from her daughter made her very happy. Gu Xingyin sat beside her, put down the book, and looked at it carefully for a while. Then he nodded affirmatively. "Very beautiful." She said it was beautiful, but she frowned. The beautiful woman asked nervously, "What's wrong?" Gu Xingyin said seriously, "I just think that these flowers shouldn't be placed here." The beautiful woman asked, "Why?" Gu Xingyin's eyes showed a little slyness. "Because Mom is sitting here. How can I see the color of these flowers?" Chapter 2035. You sure know how to talk. The beautiful woman, Mrs. Su, scolded her daughter, but the smile on her face didn't disappear. No woman could refuse a compliment that praised their beauty. Especially when the person who praised her was her most beloved daughter. At this moment, Su Jiao walked in unhappily. Seeing her sister and mother like this, she greeted them indifferently and went straight upstairs. As a mother, Mrs. Su naturally sensed her daughter's mood immediately. "Yao Yao is not very happy." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "She asked me to push her on the swing. I was tired from reading so I refused. Maybe she's not very happy." Mrs. Su had always known that her younger daughter was more delicate than her older daughter. Hearing this, she only said, "Don't spoil her too much. You're the same age." They were only born a few minutes apart, but Yan Yan had been giving in to her younger sister since they were young. She was so sensible that even as a mother, she felt sorry for her. She was willing to let her daughter live a more delicate life. Gu Xingyin nodded. "Yes, I'll be more careful in the future. Yao Yao should grow up too." Mrs. Su was a little surprised by her reaction. In the past, her daughter would never say such things. She always wanted to take care of her younger sister in every possible way. Seeing her mother looking at her like this, Gu Xingyin just pouted and said, "I also want my brother to take me to the snow mountain to play." Some time ago, the 2 sisters' brother, Su Jiqian, went to the United Kingdom to discuss a project. Originally, he said that he could bring the 2 sisters along. But later, he changed his mind and could only bring 1 sister. In fact, the 2 sisters really wanted to see the snow, but Su Jian was sensible and didn't pester people like Su Jiao. So in the end, the one who went was unsurprisingly the younger sister, Su Jiao. A sensible and modest child would always be at a disadvantage at some point in time. Hearing her daughter's words, Mrs. Su felt a little sour in her heart. Her husband, who had a serious personality, preferred his youngest daughter, who loved to play and quarrel. As a mother, she preferred her eldest daughter, who was sensible and iron-hearted. She hugged her daughter and said, "It's okay. Next year, I'll take you to see the snow." Gu Xingyin smiled. Now, the 16-year-old sisters were in their first year of high school. They weren't in the same school, but they weren't far from each other. It was just that most of the students from the two schools didn't like each other. Jisoo Middle School, where Su Jian was from, was a well-known high school in the country. Most of the students there were straight-A students. They looked down on the ignorant and incompetent second generations of the Yingde Middle School next door. And the students of Yingde High School, where Su Jiao was from, didn't have the slightest good impression of the group of Jisoo High School who had their eyes on the top of their heads. In terms of reputation, Su Jian and Su Jiao were both well-known figures in their respective schools. It was just that the way he became famous was a little different. In Jisoo Middle School, junior sister Su Jian, who was in her first year of high school, won the championship of the Xia City hosting competition and the championship of the National High School Debate competition shortly after she entered the school. In addition, at the welcoming party, this quiet and elegant girl shocked the audience with a passionate piano piece, Croatian Rhapsody, and became a popular figure in Jisoo Middle School. At the same time, Su Jiao also became a popular figure in Yingde High School. Because during her military training, she hooked up with the president of the student union of Yingde High School. That wasn't all. In just over 2 months after entering the school, more than 10 students had already gotten into conflicts because of her. Chapter 2036. Why is there a conflict? Of course, it's to get the beauty's attention. There are many students who play love games in Yingde High School, and there are also many girls. But Su Jiao is really the only one who is so bold and unrestrained. She's a demon in the boy's heart, and a poisonous thorn in the girl's heart. This is probably how the students of Yingde High School think of Su Jiao. That is to say, the students of Yingde High School and Jisoo High School don't interfere with each other's business. Otherwise, the relationship between this pair of sisters would not be unknown until now. But, what Gu Xingyin plans to do now is to expose the relationship between the two. Then, she will take this opportunity to do something. This day, after school. Yen, there's a new milk tea shop behind the school. Let's go and try it together. Tianmi, a classmate who has a good relationship with her, asks her. Gu Xingyin shakes her head and says apologetically, I'm afraid I can't today. I want to pick up my sister later. Tianmi is a little surprised. Yen, you have a sister? Gu Xingyin's face shows a smile. It seems that she has a good relationship with this sister, and her name is Su Jiao. She and I are twins. Now she's studying in Yingde. Twins? Sure enough, Tianmi's attention is immediately attracted by her words. She really wants to see a girl who looks like Yen. And, I heard that Yingde is in a mess. I'll go with you. She is a little worried. Among the students of Jisoo High School, Yingde's reputation is really not good. Gu Xingyin didn't expect that she would ask to go with her, but it doesn't seem to be a big deal. She nods, then let's go together. The distance between the two schools is not very far. The two decide to walk. Along the way, Gu Xingyin spares no effort to talk about how cute and obedient her sister is. She's obviously a sister complex. It makes Tianmi very curious about this Su Jiao who she has never seen before. Soon, the two arrived at the school gate of Yingde. At this time, there are many people coming and going at the school gate. Gu Xingyin noticed that many people were sizing him up with their gazes. Those gazes didn't have any good intentions. Tianmi obviously noticed it too. She couldn't help but complain in a low voice, I told you that Yingde is in a mess. Look at how they look at people. How rude. Gu Xingyin patted her arm and said, well, I'll call Yao. When she comes out, we'll go drink milk tea together. Tianmi nodded. Gu Xingyin took out her mobile phone and was about to make a call. Then, she was stopped by a girl's voice. Isn't this campus belle Su? Gu Xingyin looked up and saw a few girls in Yingde High School's uniform walking towards them with unfriendly expressions. It seemed like it was directed at him. Gu Xingyin roughly understood that these girls should be targeting Su Jiao. However, she didn't say it out loud. Instead, she asked curiously, "Who are you?" Seeing her like this, the girl couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "What kind of game is School Belle Su playing? Do you think you can pretend to be a top student by wearing Ji Suo's uniform? Or have you come up with some new tricks to seduce someone in bed?" Her words made the other girls around her laugh. Another girl with dyed hair said exaggeratedly, "You don't say, School Belle Su really looks a little pure after changing her clothes and makeup." Chapter 2037. It's a pity that no matter how decent she looks on the outside, she's still a slut who has slept with countless people. Gu Xingyin was trembling with anger. He pointed at the girls and said, "Who are you? What do you mean by framing others for no reason? Be careful that I'll sue you for slander." Slander? The leading girl thought she heard a big joke. She looked at Gu Xingyin and said, "Who in Yingde doesn't know that you, Su Jiao, are a slut who can sleep with anyone? Sue us. Go ahead and sue us. If you sue the whole Xia city, everyone will know what kind of shameless vixen you are. Hey, is there something wrong with you guys? This is our Yan Yan's first time in Yingde. If you want to scold someone, please find the right person first. Our Yan Yan's name is Su Jian, not Su Jiao." Tian Mi seemed to realize something and stood in front of Gu Xingyin and retorted coldly. When the girls heard this, they were all stunned. Looking at Gu Xingyin carefully, they felt that although this girl looked exactly the same as Su Jiao, her temperament was completely different. Did they really mistake her for someone else? The girl who dyed her hair spoke again. "Are you kidding me? Where did you learn this new trick from?" She looked at Gu Xingyin with some disdain. "When you're lying, can't you at least change your phone? Su Jiao also uses this phone. Even the phone casing is exactly the same. You say you're not Su Jiao, are you her twin sister? Do you really think this is an idle drama?" Gu Xingyin said in her heart, "I'm really her twin sister." She stopped Tian Mi, who still wanted to argue with her, and dialed 110 in front of her without another word. Rumors kill people. So Yao Yao's life in the school is like this. I'm going to call the police today. Let's see if you're justified in framing others. Seeing her like this, the girls were stunned for a moment. You're really not Su Jiao. Gu Xingyin ignored her and called her parents without another word. His words were very serious. He said that Su Jiao had suffered a great grievance in Yingde and had been framed and slandered. If he hadn't come to Yingde today, he wouldn't have found out. His own daughter was being treated like this in school. How could this be? Without another word, Papa Su and Mama Su put down whatever they were doing and rushed to the school. Gu Xingyin called Su Jiao again and said that she would wait for her at the school gate. At that time, Su Jiao was cuddling with a senior in the school's dance studio. After receiving the call, her face didn't look good. What's the matter? The boy's hand was still dishonestly drilling into her clothes. Su Jiao slapped his hand away in annoyance. Don't make trouble. My sister is here. I have to meet her at the school gate. The boy's eyes lit up. You have a sister? Is she pretty? Su Jiao looked at her mockingly. Of course it's beautiful. But don't think about it. She's a top student in Jisuo. She's not like us. Seeing the boy's appearance, she wasn't angry. People like them were only together for the sake of novelty and pleasure. You said feelings. These days, who still cared about that kind of thing? Seeing that she tidied herself up and walked to the school gate, the boy hurriedly followed. I'll go with you to meet our sister. Knowing that he had an ulterior motive, Su Jiao just sneered and didn't say anything. Chapter 2038. On the other side, Gu Xingyin stood there quietly after the phone call. She seemed to have made up her mind to stand there and wait for someone. And those few girls also stood aside in disbelief, as if they really wanted to see if Su Jiao was deliberately mystifying things. Originally, Su Jiao was a very famous person in Yingde. In addition, Gu Xingyin was wearing a Jisoo school uniform and was surrounded by a few unfriendly Yingde students. It was really eye-catching. Many people who were preparing to go home after school also quietly stopped in their tracks, ready to watch the fun. When Su Jiao came to the school gate, she saw such a scene. Her sister, Su Jian, and another Jisoo student she didn't know were standing at the gate of her school. Facing all kinds of gazes, her expression didn't change, indifferent like a pure snow lotus in front of Buddha. She was a white lotus. This had always been Su Jiao's secretly evaluation of her sister. Hypocrite. She rolled her eyes in her heart and walked over to that side. When the boy standing next to her saw Su Jian, he was startled, and then a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He only knew that it was Su Jiao's sister, but he didn't expect it to be twins. The sisters who looked exactly the same, if they could play together. Thinking about it, he felt a little hot. Su Jiao ignored the gazes on her and walked straight to Gu Xingyin. Sister. Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. When she looked at Su Jiao, she already had a smile on her face. Yao Yao. The few Yingde girls who were looking for trouble with Gu Xingyin looked at Su Jiao walking over, as if they had seen a ghost. They couldn't help but look back at Gu Xingyin standing there. Were they really exactly the same? Su Jiao looked at them and knew what they were here for. She rolled her eyes at the girls and sneered. Zhang Jijia, I don't want to fight with you today. Don't look for trouble. As soon as she said that, Gu Xingyin seemed to realize something. She hurriedly took 2 steps forward and came to Su Jiao's side, holding her hand. Oh right, let me tell you, Yao Yao. I just came to your school, these girls, she pointed at the few people who were looking for trouble earlier and said with some anger in her voice, their words are very unpleasant. Every word they say is framing you. When Su Jiao heard her words, she could roughly guess what her sister, who had always lived in a civilized environment, had heard. She didn't care about these things at all. She couldn't help but pull her hand out of Gu Xingyin's and said impatiently, what's the big deal? Their mouths are on their bodies. Let them say whatever they want. It's not like they'll lose anything. The girl, Zhang Jijia, who was the leader of the group, obviously knew that she had found trouble with the wrong person. They thought that they were quite reasonable and were a little embarrassed to Gu Xingyin, an outsider. Originally, they planned to let Su Jiao go today. But when they heard Gu Xingyin's words, they couldn't bear it. Zhang Jijia raised her eyelids and said with a sneer, unpleasant words. Talking nonsense. I say, sister, do you really not know or are you pretending not to know? What kind of person is your good sister Su Jiao? Gu Xingyin was furious. Shut up, all of you. She looked at Su Jiao and said comfortingly, Yao Yao, don't be afraid. I've already called my parents and called the police. These people who started rumors and caused trouble will definitely be taught a lesson. Chapter 2039. When she said this, her eyes were sparkling. Obviously, she was very satisfied with what she had done. However, Su Jiao's expression changed drastically. She said angrily, you even called Dad and Mom? And called the police? Gu Xingyin nodded and said gently, Yao Yao, don't worry about being retaliated against. Dad and Mom will come over to solve the problem later. Tell us all the grievances you have suffered in the past few months. We will help you. At most, you can change schools. Before she could finish speaking, she was pushed away fiercely. Su Jian, you're so annoying. I'm fine here. Who asked you to meddle in other people's business? Su Jiao glared at her. Looking carefully, her eyes were full of disgust and anger. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Su Jiao had pushed her too hard. If Tianmi hadn't reacted in time, she would have been pushed down directly. As a bystander, Tianmi, who had seen everything from the beginning to the end, could see that Yan Yan's sister wasn't as innocent and harmless as Yan Yan said. Looking at her now, she was clearly guilty. Thinking of what the girls next to her said, Tianmi didn't think further. She just said to Su Jiao, right? Our Yan Yan specially came over after school to drink milk tea with you. She knows that you have a hard time in school and is being bullied, so she wants to stand up for you. What kind of attitude is this? She's your biological sister. Su Jiao's mind was full of thoughts. Her parents were coming soon, and the police were coming too. She was afraid that her matter couldn't be hidden anymore. The Su family's upbringing was relatively strict, so although Su Jiao played crazily outside, she never showed it at home. Now that Su Jian was meddling in other people's business, wouldn't her family know everything about her? Thinking of this possibility, her mind couldn't calm down. Hearing Tianmi's question, she couldn't help but complain, did I beg Su Jian to come? I'm living well in Ingda. What right does she have to meddle in other people's business? If you ask me, you students of Jisoo should just stay in Jisoo. Don't come to Ingda to join in the fun. You. Tianmi still wanted to retort, but she suddenly heard a suppressed cry beside her. She immediately became flustered. Hey, Yan Yan, why are you crying? Don't cry, don't be sad. Your sister is an ingrate, don't cry. She took out a tissue and handed it to Gu Xingyin while glaring at Su Jiao. Heartless. Su Jiao only felt irritated at this moment. The boy beside him even put on a gentle look and said, Yao Yao's sister, don't cry. Our Yao Yao is just in a bad mood. Oh, let me introduce myself first. I'm Zhao Qing, Yao Yao's man. However, Gu Xingyin ignored him. Tianmi looked at him unhappily and said, why are you so close to me? Move away. The boy retreated to Su Jiao's side. Su Jiao looked at him coldly and said nothing. She just said to Gu Xingyin, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. She didn't want to stand here like a fool in front of others. But soon, a call stopped her in her tracks. Yao Yao, I received a call from Yan Yan. What's going on? A familiar voice came into Su Jiao's ears. Mother Su hurriedly got out of the car and saw her eldest daughter crying her heart out. Chapter 2040. Mother Su's anxiousness turned into heartache. She hurried to Gu Xingyin's side. Tianmi obediently greeted her and stepped aside, allowing Mother Su to pull Gu Xingyin into her arms. What's wrong? Mother Su asked as she patted her daughter's back. Gu Xingyin was crying so hard she couldn't speak. Mother Su then turned to look at her younger daughter. Father Su, who came up next, also looked at his daughter. Su Jiao bit her lip and didn't say anything. What was she supposed to say? That her sister was crying because she was angry? When the other girls saw that there really were parents coming over, they didn't dare to say anything else. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Then, the shrill sound of police sirens wailed in their direction. Su Jiao's eyes twitched. Su Jian had actually called the police over. Soon, several uniformed police officers came over. Who is Su Jian? We received a call from her saying that there was campus violence, and that students were wantonly insulting and abusing others. Father Su and Mother Su didn't expect their daughter to call the police, and the worry in their hearts rose several levels. Seeing her like this, the two thought that Gu Xingyin had been wronged. Mother Su said with heartache, Yan Yan, father and mother are here. If you've been wronged, tell us. We and the police will stand up for you. Gu Xingyin still didn't say anything. It wouldn't be easy to talk about this matter if she were to speak up. Tianmi looked around and stood up. To be honest, a girl of her age was still a little scared when she saw the police. But seeing her best friend like this, she was indeed angry. She stood up and explained everything that had happened not long ago in an orderly manner. She told them about the insults they had received when they first came to Yingde, and how Su Xiao's impatient attitude made Gu Xingyin so angry that she cried. She clearly didn't have a good impression of Su Xiao, and even glared at her towards the end. It was only then that Papa Su and Mama Su realized that the one being scolded was their youngest daughter, Su Xiao, and that Yan Yan was crying because of Yao Yao. Hearing Yan Yan's friend's words, Mama Su looked at her younger daughter in disbelief. Yao Yao, how could you talk to your sister like that? Was this still the lively, sweet, and spoiled little girl at home? Su Xiao's heart was full of uneasiness at this moment. She was not in the mood to speak at all. Papa Su, on the other hand, was more thoughtful. He looked at the policeman and said coldly, "Officers, thank you for coming here. It's just that my daughter has been insulted in school. I seriously suspect that this is not an isolated phenomenon. School violence is very serious now, and it has seriously affected the normal lives of students. There have even been deaths in some places. I hope that the police comrades have investigated carefully." Gu Xingyin couldn't help but think, as expected of a businessman, he knows how to state the pros and cons. He escalated this matter to campus violence, which immediately raised the severity of the matter by several levels. Even if the police don't want to pay attention to it, they have to. The effect of these words was very obvious. As soon as Papa Su said this, the policeman hurriedly said that they would investigate carefully and communicate with the school leaders. The other girls also seemed to be frightened. The girl in the lead forced herself to calm down and said, "What is insulting? What is slandering? If I really slandered her, Su Xiao, I admit my mistake, and I apologize." She sneered and said, "But uncles, you can ask the people around. When I, Zhang Jie, scolded her, Su Xiao, was there a sentence that was fabricated?" Chapter 2041. As soon as these words came out, Su Xiao's face turned pale. Father Su and Mother Su were originally furious, but when they saw their daughter's guilty expression, their hearts tightened. Could it be that there really was something they didn't know about? After all, Father Su was someone who had been in the business world for a long time, and his ability to read people's expressions was not ordinary. Seeing this, he said calmly, "Police officers, I think it's better for us to talk somewhere else." After he finished speaking, he glanced around. Because of the change here, Yingde's school gate was already surrounded by many students who were watching the fun. The police officers didn't want to be too conspicuous, so they quickly nodded. Father Su called Su Xiao's class teacher, and the teachers of Zhang Jie and the others also rushed over, and everyone went to the school's dispute room. Originally, Gu Xingyin was going to be taken by Mother Su, but she suddenly stood up straight and wiped away her tears. "Mom, I have an appointment with my classmate, so I won't go with you," she whispered. Mother Su instinctively wanted to refuse to let her eldest daughter go with her, but she looked at her daughter's obviously red and swollen eyes, and the words came to her mouth, "Then be careful on the road." Gu Xingyin nodded, confessed to Father Su, and pulled Tianmi out of the door. She didn't look at Su Xiao the whole time. Su Xiao frowned at her sister, and there was a faint uneasiness in her heart. She didn't know why, but she always felt like she had lost something. Gu Xingyin walked absent-mindedly along the way. Tianmi thought she was still sad, and comforted her, "Yan Yan, don't be sad, let's go. Your sister Mimi will invite you and milk tea." Gu Xingyin smiled at her, "Actually, I can figure it out, but I'm a little sad." Tianmi also fell silent. Anyone would be sad about this. She was afraid to bring up Gu Xingyin's sad memories, and deliberately didn't dare to mention Su Xiao's matter, but who knew that Gu Xingyin would talk about it herself. "Ever since I was young, I've always thought of her and gave in to her in everything. I even doted on her more than my parents. I thought she liked me too, because we are the closest sisters, but Mimi, did you see that? She hates me. When Gu Xingyin said this, a trace of pain flashed through her clear eyes. The pain was real. It originated from an elder sister who was hurt by her own younger sister. What could Tianmi say? She could only pat her friend on the shoulder. Everyone will grow up and have their own thoughts. Yen, take it easy. Gu Xingyin shook her head. That's not what I can't stand the most. She looked at Tianmi, her eyes filled with sadness. Did you see Yao Yao's reaction just now? She was feeling guilty. Those girls said those things about her. I called the police and told Dad and Mom, but she didn't feel angry. Instead, she felt guilty. Why would he feel guilty? Both of them knew what was hidden within. Gu Xingyin looked a little absent-minded. I can't stand it at all. The girl who loved to act coquettishly and call me sister since childhood will become a slutty vixen in others' eyes. The disappointment and sadness coming from this body were so real. Such a big reaction was because Su Jian was a person with emotional cleanliness. Her character was completely different from that of her younger sister, Su Jiao. She could understand those who wantonly lived their lives, but she didn't want to have more contact with such people. However, in the original plot, Su Jian, who was vaguely aware of something, chose to deceive herself and let her feelings for her younger sister take the upper hand until she died. But now Gu Xingyin was unwilling to forgive her. Chapter 2042. When Xiaoqing drove to a pharmacy to buy anti-inflammatory medicine, he inadvertently looked up and saw two girls in Jisua school uniform standing on the side of the road. One of them had her back to him, so he couldn't see clearly. The other girl was wearing a close-fitting school skirt that showed off her tall and slender figure. Her face was still a little young, but she already had a beautiful face. Thanks to his strong eyesight, Xiaoqing could still see the girl's red and swollen eyes from such a distance. She's crying. For some reason, Xiaoqing's heart suddenly twitched faintly. This feeling was both heartache and anger. Why is she crying? Who offended her? Xiaoqing thought for a while, then suddenly reacted. Who is this girl? Why would I have such strange emotions towards a stranger? By the time he reacted, the two girls had already disappeared without a trace. He was left alone, feeling lost. That night, Gu Xingyin ate dinner alone. The auntie at home was a little worried, but Gu Xingyin knew that most likely the Su parents already knew about Su Jiao's matter, and it was probably very chaotic over there. She slowly finished her dinner and walked in the garden for a while to digest her food before returning to her room to take a shower and change clothes to rest. A good night's sleep. The next day, when Gu Xingyin woke up in the morning, she was not surprised to see the family of three, who didn't look too good. Among them, Su Jiao's eyes were red and swollen, as if she had cried hard last night. She said good morning to her parents, then quietly began to eat. Mother Su looked at her eldest daughter as if she didn't see her younger daughter, and felt very uncomfortable. But she didn't blame Gu Xingyin at all. Yesterday afternoon, the two of them had come back from the high school after figuring out everything that had happened. It was just that the truth of the matter was really hard for the husband and wife to accept. In this world, no parents would be able to tolerate their 16-year-old daughter having sex with several boys at such a young age. Especially since there was no deception or coercion involved. She was willing. God knows, when Mother Su heard the news, she almost fainted. For a moment, she looked at Su Jiao and actually felt a sense of hatred. How could she be like this? How could she be like this? Yen. Mama Su hesitated for a moment before saying, "Your father and I have already found a new school for your sister. It's an international school in Imperial Capital, and the management is stricter. She might only come back once a month." She was afraid that her eldest daughter would be reluctant to part with him. Both she and her husband knew how deep Yan Yan's feelings for their youngest daughter were. Gu Xingyin just lowered her eyes when she heard this. Did he mean that his reputation in Xia City was ruined, so he could only send him to other places? When she heard this, she only gave a faint mm and did not express anything else. Mama Su and Papa Su looked at each other, seeing the sigh and melancholy in each other's eyes. It seemed that Yan Yan was really angry with her younger sister this time. Su Jiao glanced at Gu Xingyin. She was angry too. If Su Jian hadn't come looking for her at school, or if she hadn't taken the initiative to call the police, she wouldn't have been in this situation. Last night, she had cried for a long time and begged her parents to change their mind, but this time, her parents, who had always doted on her, had steeled their hearts. They ignored their youngest daughter's cries and said firmly that this time, there was no room for discussion. Chapter 2043. Su Jiao's heart was filled with resentment towards Gu Xingyin. She thought to herself, "You're ignoring me, but I don't want to talk to you either." Only the parents of both sides looked at their two daughters with some worry. No parents wanted to see their two children have a bad relationship, especially Su Jiao. They only had one pair of daughters, and they hoped that after they passed away, the sisters would be able to look out for each other, and not cut each other off. In the evening, Mama Su went to Gu Xingyin's room. Gu Xingyin was sitting on the bed reading a book, and was a little surprised to see her mother come in. As a mother who respected her children's privacy and free space, Mama Su rarely took the initiative to visit her children's rooms. "Mom." Mama Su looked at her eldest daughter and called out to her. Gu Xingyin looked at her in confusion. Under the gentle but not glaring light in the room, Mama Su felt that her eldest daughter's eyes were so clear that they seemed to be shining. She sighed. "Yan Yan, we've already booked a flight for Yao Yao tomorrow morning." After she said that, she saw the light in her eldest daughter's eyes go out. She said gloomily, "Oh." Her attitude was clear, she didn't want to talk about it. Mama Su saw that and felt a little embarrassed. She knew very well that her eldest daughter was the one who had been wronged in this matter. But as a mother, she still hoped that her two daughters could reconcile. So she said, "Yan Yan, don't blame your sister, okay?" Gu Xingyin closed her book and didn't say anything. Mama Su looked at her daughter patiently. She knew her eldest daughter's temperament. No matter what the answer was, she wasn't someone who would use avoidance and silence to solve a problem. Sure enough, as if she was sorting out her words, Gu Xingyin paused for a while before she spoke. "Mom, I'm actually very tired." Mama Su's eyes widened. "Since I was little, I've always thought of myself as the older sister, so I should be good to Su Jiao. Whenever I got something, I would leave the best for her. Whenever I saw something new, I would definitely take her to see it. When something happened, I would stand in front of her. Just like this time, when I thought she was being bullied, I didn't even think about it and wanted to stand up for her." Gu Xingyin raised her head and looked into her mother's eyes. People's hearts are made of flesh. For so many years, even if we were strangers, not to mention that we're sisters of the same mother. If she had thought of me and thought of my good points, she would not have said such heart-wrenching words to me. At this point, she suddenly laughed softly. "Mom, after all these years, are you used to it? Do you think that since I'm the elder sister, it's only right for me to give in to Su Jiao?" Mama Su was speechless. She had always prided herself on being fair. It was only when her eldest daughter laid everything out that she suddenly realized that she and her husband had long been unfair in their hearts. Yan Yan was only a few minutes older than Yao Yao. Since when did they think that Yan Yan should give in to Yao Yao? Just because she was sensible, she should be at a disadvantage. Gu Xingyin sighed as she spoke. She gently lowered her head, and the curve of her neck was unusually fragile. There was a trace of imperceptible grievance in her tone. "Sometimes, I also wish that after I get into trouble without any scruples, there will be someone who will pamper and protect me. Chapter 2044. Mrs. Su's heart shook. Her eldest daughter's soft words were like a soft knife, slowly but surely grinding into the softest part of her heart. Such unbearable pain made it impossible for her to escape. She couldn't help but reach out and put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Gu Xingyin felt her mother's body tremble slightly. But it wasn't enough. She curved her eyes and said softly but cruelly, "Mom, I don't want to talk to her anymore. I don't like her anymore." She clearly felt her mother's body tremble violently, but she closed her eyes and didn't say another word. Mrs. Su's eyes were red when she came out of her eldest daughter's room. She then went to her younger daughter's room. Su Jiao's room was very messy. Her clothes and shoes were scattered all over the bed and floor. She had always been resistant to her parents' decision, and naturally didn't want to clean up. Mrs. Su frowned when she saw the scene. She was a woman who liked to be clean and tidy, and the style of the room clearly didn't make her happy. But now wasn't the time to be concerned about that. Mrs. Su took a look and planned to have the housekeeper come over later to clean up. "Yao Yao." She called out to her daughter, who was sitting on the bed hugging her knees. Su Jiao was full of resentment. She didn't want to leave Xia City, didn't want to go to the capital where she didn't even know her friends. In Su Jiao's eyes, her parents made such a decision because they despised her. She was abandoned. Because they had a better daughter in Su Jian. Mrs. Su's arrival brought her a last glimmer of hope. "Mom!" Her eyes lit up. Su Jiao got off the bed and took her mother's hand, her eyes full of hope. "Can you tell Dad not to send me to the capital? I miss you. I don't want to go there. I can't bear to part with you." Her delicate features and the way she pouted her lips and acted coquettishly could make most people lose control. What's more, the person she was acting coquettishly with was her own mother. Su Jiao's coquettishness had always worked on Mrs. Su. She thought that as long as her soft-hearted mother was persuaded, then her chances of persuading her father would increase infinitely. Her father had always been strict with his children, but was incomparably gentle and indulgent with his wife. Su Jiao's plan was perfect, but she miscalculated this time. Her mother looked at her helplessly. "Yao Yao, your father and I made the decision to send you to the capital this time. Mama can't indulge you anymore." Su Jiao could tell from her eyes that there was no turning back for this matter. She snorted and unhappily let go of her mother's hand. She angrily sat on the bed again with a look that said, "I'm very unhappy. Don't bother me." Mother Su wanted to say something when she saw her daughter like this, but hesitated. She stood there for a while, and Su Jiao never looked back. After a while, Su Jiao said in a muffled voice, "Then why did Mom come here?" "Yao Yao, you should apologize to your sister before you go to the capital," said Mrs. Su in a gentle voice. Su Jiao suddenly turned her head. She didn't expect that her mother would come looking for her in the middle of the night not to console her, but to ask her to apologize to Su Jian. On what basis? If it weren't for her, he wouldn't have fallen to the point where he couldn't even stay in Xia City, where he grew up. She didn't want to. She didn't say anything, but her expression and attitude clearly expressed her refusal. Chapter 2045. Mother Su's expression was one of obvious disappointment. Seeing Yao Yao being so willful and insensible, she once again reflected on the way she had educated her child. It was undoubtedly a failure. "Yao Yao." When she spoke again, her mother's voice had become stern. Su Jiao jumped in fright. In all her memories of being sensible, her mother had always played the role of a loving mother. She rarely spoke to her with such a stern expression. Mother Su said word by word, "Go apologize to your sister. You've gone too far this time. You've hurt her." Su Jiao had always been a rebellious person to the bone. Otherwise, she wouldn't have played so crazily in school. It was just that when she was at home, she had hidden her rebellious nature. Because she knew what kind of appearance could get more love from her parents. But now that she was going to be sent to the capital, Su Jiao didn't want to hold back her temper at all. I won't. She stood up in annoyance and turned her head. Mother Su clearly saw that when her younger daughter mentioned her sister, her face was full of disgust and impatience. What did I hurt her in? Su Jiao was indignant. She's always doing this and that in the name of what's good for me. When did I say I wanted it? Did I beg her to care for me? You always say that Su Jian is obedient and sensible. I think she's doing it on purpose. She hasn't given up anything at all, but in everyone's eyes, she's that obedient and well-behaved daughter. I'm not going to apologize to her. I hate Su Jian. I don't want to see her at all. Su Jiao said loudly. Mother Su trembled with anger. She found it hard to believe that Su Jiao would say such cold words. Yan Yan was so good to her. They had seen it all since they were young. As the person involved, could she really not feel it? There had never been a time when Mother Su so clearly felt her eldest daughter's feelings when she said those words. She should have felt her younger sister's attitude, right? That was why she was so sad and said, I don't like her anymore, in a fit of pique. Su Jiao, when you say this, touch your own conscience. How could I have given birth to such a heartless thing like you? Mother Su was furious. Su Jiao was now a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. She straightened her neck and retorted, yes. That's right, I'm heartless, an ingrate. It's fine as long as you have your obedient daughter, Su Jian. Throw me to the capital and let me fend for myself. Mother Su was so angry that she couldn't speak, and the mother and daughter parted on bad terms. The next day, Gu Xingyin went to class as usual. When Mother Su asked her for her opinion for the last time, she refused to send Su Jiao off. She wanted to cut off all ties with Su Jiao. Su Jiao, on the other hand, was stunned when she saw that Su Jian was so heartless as to not send her off. She was in disbelief. From what she knew, no matter what trouble she got into, even if she made Su Jian the scapegoat and angered her, she would get over it quickly and would not blame her at all. In Su Jiao's heart, Su Jian was the kind of person who didn't have a temper at all. No matter how you provoked her, she wouldn't get angry. She thought that it would be the same this time, that Su Jian would take the initiative to make up with her. At that time, Su Jiao still didn't understand that all tolerance and forgiveness was built on the basis that the other party loved you. Chapter 2046. Su Jian liked her sister from the same mother and loved her dearly, so she could forgive her no matter what. But what if this originally unequal relationship lost the support of family love one day? Su Jian had already chosen to give up, and Su Jiao was still ignorant. She still didn't realize that she had already lost the most precious relationship in the world. At this time, Su Jiao just looked back angrily before boarding the plane, but she still didn't see that familiar figure. She turned back and said to herself, Su Jian, I won't forgive you. Gu Xingyin was quietly doing exercises in the classroom. She received a reminder from the system that Su Jiao had already boarded the plane to the capital. Gently exhaling, Gu Xingyin had a relaxed smile on her face. Mimi, let's go for milk tea after school today. She should have gone last time, but the matter with Su Jiao had ruined her mood. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Su Jian had already entered the second year of high school, and Su Jiao had also gone to the capital for a year. In the first few months, she came back once a month. Later on, she gradually stopped coming back during the monthly holidays. She would only come back once during the long holidays. Gu Xingyin knew that a person like Su Jiao would be able to live well no matter where she was. When she was free, she would pay attention to Su Jiao's whereabouts. The high school she went to was chosen by Su Jiao's parents after a long time, and the management was very strict. At least, Su Xiao couldn't mess around in that kind of place. However, a cat that wanted to steal fish couldn't be caged in a cage. In addition to being in a bad mood for the first month, Su Xiao confirmed her relationship with the school hunk in the same grade in the second month. But due to the school's strict regulation of puppy love, the two could only be sneaky and didn't dare to expose themselves in front of others. Su Xiao's parents, who had been paying attention to their daughter's situation, thought that their daughter had finally learned well and were relieved. But in reality, Su Xiao and her new boyfriend were having fun in the school's Grove Lounge. During the free time during the holidays, they even went out to bars and had one-night stands with good men. This was a new trick that Su Xiao had recently fallen in love with. In her opinion, this kind of game where both parties were willing to go their separate ways after sleeping together was really novel and exciting, and she didn't have to take responsibility for it. The two parents could clearly see that the relationship between the two children at home had dropped to the freezing point. Jieyu's eldest daughter, who had always been gentle and understanding, seemed to have been hurt badly a year ago and refused to forgive her younger sister. Even if Su Xiao took the initiative to talk to her, Gu Xingyin just coldly replied with one or two sentences. Her attitude was not much better than that of a stranger. Papa Su and Mama Su had talked to their eldest daughter a few times, but their daughter, who had always been gentle, was unexpectedly persistent this time. I feel very good now, Gu Xingyin said with a smile, but there was no warmth in her eyes. Su Xiao had always been spoiled. She couldn't do things like stick a warm face to a cold butt. After her goodwill didn't get a response, she was even more dissatisfied. In her words, Su Jian doesn't want to talk to me, do you think I care? What Gu Xingyin wanted was for everyone to know that the two daughters of the Su family didn't get along. In the future, no matter what trouble Su Xiao caused, no one would tie her and Su Xiao together. Don't drag others down with you if you want to court death. See you for the rest of the night. Chapter 2047. Yao Yao, it's the holidays tomorrow. Are you willing to? Su Xiao walked forward casually. Beside her, a handsome boy followed eagerly behind her. Su Xiao was already a little impatient. This boy was her boyfriend who she had been dating for more than a year. Su Xiao was already sick of it. It was just that this school was very strict and the ratio of men to women was large. There were very few boys to begin with, and there were even fewer good-looking ones who would cause trouble. In that case, the people around him could be considered to be the best among them. It was also because of this reason that Su Xiao hadn't broken up with him. However, for a woman who pursued novelty and excitement, not changing boyfriends for more than a year was an extremely boring thing. The boy behind her was still saying something, but Su Xiao didn't hear him at all. She looked around the school that she was already familiar with and said indifferently, "No, I told my family that I'm going home during the holidays." The boy was disappointed, but he didn't say anything. Su Xiao wasn't in the mood to care about his feelings. She slowly walked out of the school gate. Every month, the students of this school could only go out of the school gate during the 3 or 4 days of the holidays. This was a nightmare for Su Xiao. She had complained more than once that her family had sent her to prison. Her parents had bought an apartment for her near the school. This was what she had exchanged for with a good attitude and coquettishness after half a year of school. Su Xiao entered her apartment and changed out of her tacky school uniform. That was what she had always said about this school uniform. She took a shower, changed into a halter top, and put on a mature and flirtatious makeup. Su Xiao looked at the woman in the mirror with satisfaction. She had an exquisite figure and a seductive aura all over her body. This appearance was the most popular in the nightclub. Looking at the time, it was almost dark. She picked up her bag, turned around, and went downstairs. After finishing her dinner, Su Xiao slowly walked toward her destination. She looked just like a beautiful fashionable lady. Red light. Xiao stopped the car and looked around casually. His gaze suddenly paused. He saw a woman. The woman had a good figure and a beautiful face, but Xiao wasn't attracted by these 2 points. A year ago, he had caught a glimpse of that figure in Xia City. Even now, it hadn't disappeared from Xiao mind. Xiao had never believed in love at first sight. He had once thought that as time passed, the girl who had once made his heart throb would gradually become a beautiful memory. Wonderful memories. But it didn't. Even after such a long time, he could still clearly remember the girl's light blue skirt fluttering in the breeze, and her red and swollen eyes that had been baptized by tears. He had thought of going to Xia City again to see if he could find her. It was just that he was too busy with school and family matters. With such a delay, more than a year had passed. But today, when he was waiting at a red light out of boredom, he saw a woman who looked very similar to the girl he saw last year. Xiao felt excited for no reason. This woman looked very similar to her, but Xiao was sure that she wasn't her. Chapter 2048. Xiao, what are you looking at? Chu Ming, his best friend in the front passenger seat, asked curiously. He followed Xiao gaze and suddenly smiled meaningfully. So you're looking at a beauty. Chu Ming felt that this was very strange. He and Xiao grew up in the same courtyard. The two of them had been playing with each other since they were young. Chu Ming knew this childhood friend's personality quite well. For example, he didn't get close to women. With the Xiao family's attitude, there were countless women who were willing to stick to Xiao. Look at the people in their circle. Which one of them didn't learn how to eat meat when they were in their teens? Only Xiao, who was already 20 years old, hadn't even touched a girl's hand. If he hadn't confirmed that this childhood friend's sexual orientation was normal, Chu Ming would have been worried about his chastity. What was rare was that Xiao actually looked at a woman for more than half a minute today. Chu Ming looked up at the sky outside the window. It was still so foggy. Nothing strange had happened. He also sized up Su Jiao, then said to Xiao with a face full of praise, "Brother, you have good taste. This girl's looks and figure are first-rate." As he spoke, he gave Chu Ming a thumbs up. Xiao just glanced at him and couldn't be bothered to argue with him. The red light passed. Su Jiao walked across the sidewalk to the other side. Xiao glanced at her, started the car, and turned the steering wheel. Chu Ming looked at him as if he had seen a ghost. Xiao was so fast. Su Jiao looked at the time. It was still too early for the real nightlife. She was wondering if she should find a coffee shop to stay for a while when a car slowly stopped beside her. "Mississippi," a clear and gentle voice was heard. Su Jiao's eyes lit up. As a voice lover, she had a good impression of a man with such a voice. She turned around and saw a pair of long legs coming down from the black Cayenne. Su Jiao's eyes lit up even more. She sized up the man without leaving a trace. He had a good figure, and under his slightly rolled-up white shirt were beautiful muscle curves. Further up, his facial features were clear and elegant. At this moment, he was looking at her with a gentle gaze. He was very much like a well-educated young master in a literary work. Such a man was actually not Su Jiao's cup of tea. She admired those masculine and fit men more, because often such men were more powerful in bed than ordinary men. However, this was not a necessary condition. For example, at this moment, Su Jiao was very happy to develop a one-night relationship with such a good-looking man. "Are you calling me?" The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and she lifted her chin slightly, showing just the right amount of arrogance. Men, after all, wouldn't cherish a woman who delivered herself to their doorstep. She had to show her delicate side. But obviously, Xiao didn't have the extra energy to pay attention to these things. He only smiled and asked, "Miss, are you from Xia City?" This time, it was Su Jiao who was surprised. She frowned and asked, "How did you know?" Xiao Qing answered honestly, "I once saw someone who looked like you in Xia City." Chu Ming, who was standing on the other side, looked at his childhood friend in shock. "I didn't expect you to be this kind of childhood friend. He even knew how to pick up girls. What happened to not getting close to women?" Chapter 2049. He thought that Xiao Qing was just making up an excuse, but he didn't know that Xiao Qing was telling the truth. Su Jiao's expression changed when she heard Xiao Qing's words. In Xia City, who else could look like her other than Su Jian? Her expression immediately turned cold. "You've got the wrong person." With that, she turned around and left without another word. Chu Ming was dumbfounded, and Xiao Qing was deep in thought. Chu Ming was a little confused. Why did she suddenly leave? Xiao Qing shook his head. "I don't know. Let's go back." Chu Ming was confused by his attitude. "Aren't you going to chase after her?" Xiao Qing was even more confused. "Why should I chase after her?" Chu Ming was shocked. "Didn't you spend so much effort to strike up a conversation with her because you like her?" Xiao Qing, he looked at Chu Ming meaningfully and said, "Imagining things is a disease." Chu Ming, Xiao Qing had already made up his mind. Su Jiao also angrily walked to a cafe. She ordered a cup of cappuccino and sulked by herself. Why could she still feel Su Jian's shadow in the capital? It was simply annoying. She thought of that man just now. He was a handsome man who fit her taste very well. She thought that he was here to hit on her, but the moment he opened his mouth, he asked about Su Jian. No. Su Jiao was annoyed. How could he distinguish between her and Su Jian? If she had known earlier, she would have lied and said that she was the one he met at that time. She thought to herself. A man who had ambiguous thoughts about Su Jian had actually slept with her, it couldn't be any better. Unfortunately, her attitude just now was too intense. Su Jiao sighed inwardly and comforted herself not to think about it. There were plenty of fish in the sea. She was going to hook up with someone better than the man just now. At midnight. Su Jiao, who had put on exquisite makeup, slowly walked to a famous bar street in the western district of the capital. She looked around for a while and chose a place she frequented. After going in, she didn't provoke anyone. She just ordered a few glasses of wine and slowly sipped them. It seemed casual, but there was a knack to it. Her beautiful red lips opened slightly, revealing a little bit of her red tongue. The clear wine flowed from her red lips into her mouth. Occasionally, a trace of it slid down her white chin, past her sexy collarbone, and into her snow-white breasts. Gulp. Su Jiao seemed to hear the sound of saliva being swallowed. She knew that at least a third of the men in the bar had already locked onto her. She was pleased with herself, but she did not show it on her face. She, Su Jiao, never needed to take the initiative to find a man. There were many men lining up for her. Soon, someone walked up. "Miss, may I have the honor of treating you to a drink?" The man asked politely. Su Jiao looked at him critically. His figure was weak. At first glance, she could tell that he was a white-collar worker who lacked exercise. Her lips curled up into a gorgeous smile, but the words that came out of her mouth were the most hurtful and poisonous. "You have the nerve, sir. I'm afraid you can't satisfy me." The man left with an ashen face. The next one would be here soon. He continued to be rejected. After repeating this scene for a long time, Su Jiao finally heard a deep voice that piqued her interest. "I wonder if I can satisfy you. I'm really sorry, today's update is a little late. Everyone, rest early after reading it. Good night, good night." Chapter 2050. Su Jiao's ears twitched. The man's breath fell on her ear, hot and hot. No matter what his appearance was, his voice was quite to her liking. She turned her head and looked over. A tall and powerful man appeared in her sight. Gu Xingyin, who was listening to light music and reading at home, heard the prompt sound of the system. Su Jiao and that man were together. That man was the one who mistook Su Jian for Su Jiao in the original plot and forcibly kidnapped her and tortured her to death. Gu Xingyin carefully bookmarked the pages of the book in her hand. Her delicate eyebrows wrinkled. This development was much faster than the original plot. In the original plot, Su Jiao and that man hooked up after they both went to college in the capital and became adults. It was precisely because Su Jian was also in the capital that Su Jiao could put the blame on her sister without any burden. It seemed that this time, Su Jiao was sent to the capital in advance, which made a lot of things change. This time, Gu Xingyin was quite curious about how Su Jiao would deal with it. She couldn't use Su Jiao, who was still in Xia City, as an excuse again, could she? Looking at the time, Gu Xingyin closed the book in her hand, turned off the light, and prepared to rest. Her work and rest had always been quite regular. The next morning, Gu Xingyin didn't receive any prompt from the system until she went to school after breakfast. Thinking about it, it was obvious that people with short nights would not wake up so early. Sure enough, when the morning self-study was over and the first class was about to start, Gu Xingyin finally got the feedback from the system. The conclusion made her a little surprised. Maybe it was because the current Su Jiao hadn't seen all the sales like in the original plot. She was quite satisfied with that man. Similarly, that man was quite satisfied with Su Jiao's young and tender body. Su Jiao didn't prepare to leave after sleeping with him as in the original plot. Instead, she exchanged contact information with the man. It seemed that she had a long-term plan. In this case, all of this had nothing to do with Gu Xingyin. Everything was developing in a completely different direction from the original plot. She was in a good mood the whole day. Even when Mama Su suggested that they go to the capital during the school holidays, she didn't express any disgust. She knew very well in her heart that Mother Su was simply missing Su Jiao, who hadn't been home for almost 3 months. Mother Su was pleasantly surprised to see that her eldest daughter didn't resist. Gu Xingyin sighed. This mother had never given up on any of her daughters. For the past 2 years, she had been trying to mend the relationship between her 2 daughters. Gu Xingyin didn't even have the heart to tell her that it was all in vain. She and Su Jiao could never be reconciled. Gu Xingyin's school and Su Jiao's school had different holidays. Ji Sua had a 3-day break at the end of every month, and Mama Su's intention was to visit the capital during those 3 days. Gu Xingyin didn't have any objections. She would just treat it as a trip. Meanwhile, in a mansion somewhere far away in the capital, Xiao Cheng's voice was calm. Yes, help me buy a ticket to Xia City at the end of this month on the 29th. After hanging up the phone, Xiao Cheng's eyes were filled with anticipation. Chapter 2051. Just last night, he finally made a decision. He was going to Xia City to look for the girl he had only met once, but had never forgotten. He wanted to meet her and confirm what was going on with that inexplicable impulse and nostalgia in his heart. He didn't know if she had changed after not seeing each other for more than a year. Xiao Qing didn't doubt that he would recognize her. After all, no one else had ever given him such a strong feeling. The 29th arrived quickly. The weather had turned cold, and the temperature had dropped over the past few days. When Gu Xingyin went out, she had already put on a long windbreaker. Mother Su didn't tell Gu Xingyin that she was going to see her younger daughter. Over the past year, her eldest daughter's attitude made it difficult for her to bring up the matter. On the contrary, Gu Xingyin felt a little distressed when she saw her mother's conflicted look. She simply said, "Mom, when we reach the capital, you can go see Su Jiao on the way." Mother Su was happy that her eldest daughter had taken the initiative to bring up the matter, but then she immediately reacted. She was talking about her going to see her. For a moment, Mother Su didn't know what to feel in her heart. She asked, "Yan Yan, aren't you going to see your sister?" Gu Xingyin shook her head. "Better not. If I see her, I don't think either of us will be happy." Mother Su's mouth moved, and Gu Xingyin could see that she still had something to say. However, there were some things that she could do for her mother, so she would naturally do them. But there were also some things that couldn't be compromised no matter what. There weren't many people in the first-class cabin, and the seats around the mother and daughter were empty. Gu Xingyin lowered her voice and said in a voice that wouldn't disturb others, but was loud enough for her mother to hear clearly. "Mom, I know what you want to see. But Su Jiao and I can't be sisters anymore." Mother Su looked at her with a sad gaze. Gu Xingyin hardened her heart. "Mom, I'm sorry." She turned her head away and pulled down her blindfold, no longer looking at her mother. Mother Su didn't say anything else. Gu Xingyin had something on her mind, and she fell asleep during the steady and boring flight. When he woke up again, he heard the notification that he was about to land. She took off the blindfold and met Mama Su's gentle gaze. Mama Su took her hand. "Yan Yan, Mama won't force you. Mama was thinking that since you two are sisters, you can take care of each other in the future if your relationship is good. If you really don't like it." She paused for a moment before saying the rest of her words, "No matter what, as long as you're happy." Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief. Sure enough, in the heart of any parent, they were infinitely tolerant of their children. Even if she was the one who made such a willful request. The plane landed safely, and the mother and daughter left the airport. At the same time, a man who was preparing to go to Xia City also hurried over. Xiao Qing had a meeting in the morning. By the time it ended, it was already very late. He rushed to the airport. Just as he was about to enter, his eyes suddenly widened. He saw two people coming out of the airport gate. Of course, although there were two people, his gaze almost completely fell on one of them. It was her. He hadn't seen her for more than a year, but she had hardly changed. Chapter 2052. Xiao Qing stood there and watched as the figure walked towards him, getting closer and closer. He also wanted to see it more clearly. There were still changes. She seemed to have grown a lot taller, and her face was longer and more three-dimensional than before. Xiao Qing subconsciously raised his leg to get closer to her, but after taking a step, he stopped. If he went over to look for her so rashly, would he be treated as a lunatic? Did he want him to say, "I haven't been able to forget you ever since I saw you a year ago"? Anyone would think that such words were a hooligan. Moreover, Xiao Qing glanced at the middle-aged lady beside Gu Xingyin. Looking at their similar faces, they were probably mother and daughter. It seemed like the mother and daughter had something to do, so it was better not to disturb them. As he was letting his imagination run wild, he suddenly met someone's gaze. Xiao Qing was shocked, and he subconsciously straightened his back. "She's looking at me." Xiao Qing swore that even when he was young, he had never been so nervous when his father tested him on his homework. He had washed his hair before he went out today and specially tidied it up. Yes, his taste in clothes was not bad, and he didn't do anything that would make people feel disgusted. Xiao Qing evaluated himself and came to a conclusion: he looked pretty good today. After he thought about it, he looked at the other party confidently and was about to give her a gentlemanly smile. However, where was she? Xiao Qing. He came back to his senses and realized that the mother and daughter had already walked past him and walked out. They went out, to go out. Xiao Qing felt like an idiot just now. However, even though he was an idiot, he was still quite happy in his heart. He had originally wanted to go to Xia City to look for her, but now she had come to the capital herself. It saved him a lot of effort. Seeing the mother and daughter get into a taxi, Xiao Qing hurriedly got into the car and followed them silently. Young Master Xiao Cheng, who had always prided himself on being open and aboveboard, felt like a wretched man who was secretly following a beauty. It was simply heartbreaking. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. Mother Su, who was sitting beside her, looked at her strangely. "What's wrong? Why are you so happy all of a sudden?" Gu Xingyin used the phone in her hand as a shield. "Nothing. I just saw a funny joke." Seeing this, Mother Su didn't ask any more questions and simply said, "Don't play with your phone in the car. Be careful of your eyes." Gu Xingyin smiled and nodded. Of course, she noticed Xiao Cheng. Not only did she notice him, but she also saw him secretly sizing her up, but when she looked at him, he lowered his head. Of course, now, Gu Xingyin could clearly confirm that the two low-key black cars behind him were following him all the way. They looked inconspicuous. The taxi stopped at the gate of Su Jiao's school. Mother Su got out of the car and sighed when she saw that her eldest daughter had no intention of getting out. Gu Xingyin said obediently, "I'm waiting for Mom at the hotel." Their itinerary had already been arranged. Gu Xingyin didn't want to stay at Su Jiao's apartment, so she had already booked a hotel. Xiao Qing followed behind and watched as the older lady got out of the car. The person he was thinking about was still in the car. Of course, he continued to follow without saying anything. Gu Xingyin got out of the car and walked into the hotel. Xiao Qing sat silently in the car, thinking about how to strike up a conversation. Chapter 2053. Then, he saw Gu Xingyin walk out alone. Xiao Qing thought for a moment, stopped the car, and slowly followed her. The person in front didn't seem to have a destination. She was just taking a stroll, or rather, she just wanted to walk around the capital. He followed her for about 20 minutes. Xiao Qing took a look. This was a famous theme park in the capital. Gu Xingyin walked in. Then, she found a lounge chair in a more remote location and sat down. Xiao Qing was thinking about whether he should go up when he saw the other party raise his head and look at him. He was shocked. Had he been discovered? Xiao Qing glanced at the other party. The other party's expression was gentle and calm, and no emotions could be seen. He thought for a moment and felt that this was a good opportunity to strike up a conversation, so he walked over. He walked up to Gu Xingyin. Before he could think of a way to greet her, he was shocked by her words. "You've been following me since the airport. What's the matter?" The other party didn't seem to be afraid. She tilted her head and looked at him with a hint of a smile in her tone. Xiao Qing felt a little embarrassed. After all, his behavior was really like that kind of, in short, it was filled with an indescribable perversion. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he helplessly realized that his actions really couldn't be washed away. He couldn't help but want to cover his face. Gu Xingyin looked at the man's unpredictable expression with interest. In the end, she said, "I'm sorry." She couldn't help but laugh. She winked at Xiao Qing and said, "Since you're so handsome, I'll forgive you." For the first time, Xiao Qing was so grateful to his parents for giving him a handsome face. To be fair, Xiao Qing wasn't an introverted boy. His family background, the education he had received since he was young, and the environment he grew up in were enough for him to speak frankly in any big occasion. But now, he felt at a loss for words in this quiet little world. He really wanted to strike up a conversation, but he didn't know what to say. Sigh, does she think of me as a pervert who goes up to a beauty when he sees one? Aya, she looks so cute with her eyes lowered. Her eyelashes are so long. I really want to touch them. Xiao Qing, the idiot, automatically switched to his imagination mode in his awkward state. Gu Xingyin waited for a while, but she didn't hear anything. She couldn't help but raise her head curiously. Then, she saw Xiao Cheng's handsome face with a mesmerizing smile. Gu Xingyin, logically speaking, did he really not have any special hobbies? Fortunately, Xiao Cheng was very sensitive to his surroundings. When he sensed Gu Xingyin's gaze, he immediately put away his smile and kicked those strange thoughts out of his mind. Then he asked seriously, "My name is Xiao Cheng. May I know?" Gu Xingyin also reported her name. Successfully obtained the name. Xiao Cheng was very happy. After his imagination ended, Xiao Cheng seemed to have returned to normal. He sat down on another bench and took the initiative to chat with Gu Xingyin. For someone like Xiao Cheng, as long as he was willing, he had many ways to easily gain the favor of strangers. Even if it wasn't a good impression, it wouldn't be annoying. Especially now that he was trying to please Gu Xingyin. The conversation between the two of them was quite happy. Until Gu Xingyin received a call. Xiao Cheng listened to her quietly. It was probably her mother calling to ask her to go back. Gu Xingyin hung up the phone. Chapter 2054. At a time like this, of course, he had to increase his favorability. Xiao Cheng immediately said that he could send her back. Gu Xingyin didn't refuse. Then, the car drove to the entrance of the hotel Gu Xingyin had booked. Xiao Cheng didn't open the car door immediately. He looked at Gu Xingyin and hesitated. Gu Xingyin sighed and said, "Let's exchange contact information." Xiao Cheng was overjoyed. That was what he wanted to say. But on the other hand, he felt that asking for contact information for the first time, it didn't seem right. The two of them quickly exchanged contact information. Gu Xingyin suddenly said, "If you want to pursue me, hesitating like this won't do you any good." Xiao Cheng. Gu Xingyin continued, "Why do you think I'm so polite to a man who's following me? Or do you think I'm such an easy to talk to and have no temper?" Xiao Cheng was stunned. Gu Xingyin said, "I'll stay in the capital for 3 days." Then, she opened the car door and got out. Xiao Cheng was still in a daze. After a while, he seemed to come back to his senses, and a puzzled and ecstatic expression appeared on his face. Without another word, he called his childhood friend, Chu Ming. "Chu Ming, I have something very important to ask you," he said seriously. Chu Ming, who was shopping with his new girlfriend, was shocked by his serious tone. He let his girlfriend shop on her own and walked to the other side. What happened? Then, Xiao Cheng told him about how he met Gu Xingyin today. Of course, he repeated what Gu Xingyin said in the end without missing a word. After that, he asked a little nervously, "Do you think what she's trying to say is the same as what I'm trying to say?" Chu Ming, he gritted his teeth and said, "Did you feed your 190 IQ to the dogs? She's already hinted so clearly, and you're still asking me? Hurry up. Such a stupid guy deserved to be single for 10,000 years." This was the first time Xiao Cheng felt that his childhood friend's voice was so pleasant. He suddenly laughed. "I got it. Alright, there's nothing for you to do now. You can go now." After that, he hung up the phone. Chu Ming, who had been miserably abandoned after using her, Gu Xingyin had just returned to her room when she received a message from Xiao Cheng. "Do you have time for a meal tomorrow? Have you finally figured it out?" Gu Xingyin gave an affirmative answer. Then there was a knock on her door. Opening the door, Gu Xingyin was not surprised to see Mother Su and Su Jiao, who was well-dressed, standing outside the door. Sure enough, Su Jiao had always known what kind of daughter her parents liked. Gu Xingyin looked indifferent. "Mom." She nodded at Su Jiao. Seeing her eldest daughter's expression, Mama Su was a little embarrassed. She gently tugged at her younger daughter, and Su Jiao softly called Gu Xingyin, "sister." After she said that, she looked at Su Jian eagerly, not knowing what kind of response she was expecting. Gu Xingyin did not respond. She gave a faint hum, and her attitude was no more enthusiastic than before. So Su Jiao was dissatisfied again. She glared at Gu Xingyin angrily and snorted heavily. Gu Xingyin still ignored her. Mama Su had to stand up and smooth things over. I just ordered food from the nearby Tianhe restaurant. I heard it's very famous. Shall we go for dinner together? Chapter 2055. The entire dinner was filled with an awkward atmosphere. Mother Su tried her best to ease the atmosphere, but one of her daughters was only focused on eating, while the other was unhappy after being treated coldly. The whole scene was like this. Mother Su, come, Yen Yen, try this. Yao Yao, you try it too, Su Jiao, you won't even look at me. So angry. Gu Xingyin, oh, this is delicious. This is not bad either. In the end, she could only helplessly send Su Jiao back to school. Of the three of them, only Gu Xingyin was satisfied with the meal. The hotel wasn't far from where they were staying, and Gu Xingyin planned to walk back, treating it as a digestion. A sudden change occurred. She had only walked halfway when a strange aura attacked her from behind. She took a step back and accurately avoided the man's embrace. There was a hint of surprise in the deep voice. Gu Xingyin's expression turned cold, and she turned to look at the stranger behind her. She could tolerate her lover's occasional perverted behavior, but she couldn't tolerate other men doing such things. The man in front of her was very tall, at least 1.9 meters. His face was resolute, and under his rolled-up sleeves, she could see the bulging muscles. This was a man with an aura as strong as a wolf. He narrowed his eyes, and his expression seemed a little unhappy. I haven't seen you for 2 days, and your temper has grown. At this time, Gu Xingyin also knew who he was. Wasn't he the man who tortured Su Jian to death in the original plot? Of course, he was now in a sexual relationship with Su Jiao. This man, Gu Xingyin said coldly, who are you? The man thought she was playing some kind of game, and reached out to grab her, saying obscenely, who am I? You'll know when we're on the bed. Gu Xingyin's expression turned fierce, and without saying a word, she dodged to the side. Her figure flashed, and she was already in front of the man. Then, with a swift and violent kick, she slashed at the man's waist. The man's expression turned serious, and he reacted quickly. As he retreated, he reached out to block Gu Xingyin's congratulations. So heavy. The man took 2 steps back and looked at Gu Xingyin as if looking at a monster. How could such a small body have so much strength? Gu Xingyin, who had the help of the system, did not continue to chase after him. Instead, he maintained a defensive posture and looked at him. She actually hated this man. The reason why he didn't care about him was because he knew that in this world, he and Su Jiao were together. Gu Xingyin didn't pay any attention to the matter between the two of them, holding the thought of letting the wicked deal with the wicked one. She also wanted to see what would happen to Su Jiao after provoking this man. The man's hawk-like eyes locked on Gu Xingyin. You are not Su Jiao. He was well aware of the capabilities of the women he had slept with. Gu Xingyin sneered, I said it from the beginning. The man looked at her closely, as if he was looking at a rare thing. Are you willing to follow me? Such a woman was strong in bed with her lover, and amazing in fighting as a subordinate. Gu Xingyin glanced at him coldly, and the killing intent in her eyes was clear. Do you want to die? She turned and left. I'm different from Su Jiao. Let go of those disgusting thoughts. If you push me too hard, I'll make you regret it for a lifetime. Chapter 2056. The man stood behind Gu Xingyin and didn't follow her. Firstly, he hadn't figured out Gu Xingyin's background yet. Secondly, his aching hands reminded him that if he didn't use firearms, he wouldn't be able to keep her. Even if the man had some power, he wouldn't dare to use firearms in public in the capital. That night, Su Jiao received a call from the man. A girl who looks exactly like me. Su Xiao's expression didn't look good. She snorted. Why? Are you interested in her? The man's deep voice was as sexy as ever. How is that possible? That woman looks pure and simple. How can she be compared to my little wild cat? This kind of sweet talk didn't work on Su Xiao at all. She said, don't try that. That woman is my sister, a famous straight-A student. She's not like us. She made it very clear that she wanted the man to stop having any ideas about Su Jian. Of course, Su Xiao wasn't thinking about Gu Xingyin and didn't want her to be targeted. She said that to the man because she wasn't tired of that man yet. She had classified that man as her own, so she naturally couldn't stand him being attracted to Gu Xingyin. In that case, wouldn't it prove that she couldn't compare to Su Jian? She definitely wouldn't allow that to happen. The man probably understood what she meant and didn't continue the topic. However, no one knew what he was thinking in his heart. The next day, Gu Xingyin received a message from Xiao Qing early on. He had already booked the time and place. Mom, I'm going out to play. I won't be having lunch with you. Mother Su was a little surprised. Where are you going alone? Gu Xingyin smiled. I have a good online friend in the capital. Mother Su was a little worried when she heard that. Online friend? Could it be a scam? Gu Xingyin had to comfort her. Don't worry about Mom, we have an appointment to meet in a place with many people. She is afraid that I am a bad person. She told a small lie. Otherwise, Mama Su wouldn't have dared to leave her alone. Even so, Mother Su was still worried and insisted on going with them. Gu Xingyin sighed and shook her phone. Can you report your schedule at any time? My friend will be nervous if you're here. Seeing her daughter's insistence, Mother Su could only give up. When Gu Xingyin went out, she reminded him worriedly, remember to call me. The two of them had agreed to meet at 11 o'clock, but Xiao Qing arrived before 10 o'clock. Last night, he had repeatedly called out Chu Ming, which almost drove him crazy. I say, Uncle Xiao Qing. Don't ask me any tricks or strategies. The lady has already made it so obvious. You need to be more attentive and diligent today. Show your ability to compete with the client. As long as you don't make any stupid mistakes, you'll definitely succeed. He was still a little worried. He had woken up early in the morning and groomed himself for half a day. He was finally satisfied after making sure that every strand of hair was in its proper position. When he went out, the old man, who was sitting on the sofa and watching Beijing opera, turned his head to look at his grandson a few times. Where are you going? In front of this old man who had been on the battlefield, Xiao Qing had always been serious and almost never hid anything. He subconsciously replied, to see your future granddaughter-in-law. Chapter 2057. There was silence. Old Master Xiao didn't even watch his favorite drama. He held his walking stick and turned to look at his grandson. I think I just heard a granddaughter-in-law. Xiao Qing pursed his lips and answered honestly, not yet. How well did old Master Xiao know his grandson? With just these words and his grandson's current expression, he knew what stage his granddaughter-in-law was at. It was obvious that this brat hadn't taken her down yet. He stomped his walking stick on the ground. Then why aren't you going? Xiao Qing responded and walked out. When he walked out of the door, he heard the old man's energetic voice. Remember to bring her back for me to see. Xiao Qing sat in his seat and kept looking at his watch. It should have been something that he was very confident about, but at this moment, he started to worry about gains and losses. He couldn't help but wonder if yesterday's conversation was just a hallucination. She wouldn't go back on her word, right? As he thought about it, Xiao Qing felt like he was retarded. If such behavior happened to anyone else, he would definitely be able to use sharp words to make the other party regain their lost IQ within 10 minutes. But when it came to himself, sigh. He sighed softly. As expected, the result of caring too much was definitely to worry about gains and losses. Although he had always looked like a humble and polite young master, with his identity, his life had always been smooth. How could he not have a trace of pride in his bones? Even 2 days ago, if someone had told him that one day, he would be so worried about gains and losses because of someone, he would have lost his confidence. Xiao Qing would have smiled faintly. On the surface, he would have been able to deflect the person with little effort, but in his heart, he would have cursed the person and added him to the permanent blacklist. But now, Xiao Qing thought expressionlessly that he might be the retarded one. It was 10:30 p.m. He couldn't help but take out his phone to call Chu Ming. Just as he dialed the familiar number, he saw a familiar figure walking towards him. Xiao Qing put his phone down on the table and stood up. On the other side, Chu Ming, who had been partying with a group of friends all night, saw that it was his childhood friend calling. He endured his sleepiness and answered the call. "Hello." No one said anything. "Chu Ming." He shouted again. Xiao Qing watched as Gu Xingyin sat down. Only then did he remember that his phone was still connected. Seeing that it was still connected, he hung up without saying anything. Chu Ming. He thought that something had happened to Xiao Qing, so he called him again. When Xiao Qing saw the call, he quickly replied without hesitation. The pitiful Chu Ming looked at the sentence, "I'm busy right now. I don't have time to pay attention to you. If there's anything, let's talk at night." His muddled brain reacted for a while. "Fuck, who's looking for you? You were the one who called me." He angrily threw the phone at his feet and went back to sleep. "You can answer the phone first," Gu Xingyin said when she saw Xiao Qing's behavior. Xiao Qing shook his head. "It's nothing important." He understood Chu Ming. If there really was something important, he could call you a dozen times in one go. Either you answer his call, or you get annoyed and blacklisted. Xiao Qing handed the menu to Gu Xingyin. "What do you like to eat?" Gu Xingyin glanced at it and didn't stand on ceremony with him. She casually pointed at a few dishes. Xiao Qing was obviously very happy to see her attitude. He took the menu and ordered 3 or 4 more dishes. After ordering, he handed the dishes to the waiter who was waiting at the side. He looked at Gu Xingyin without blinking. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, "Why are you looking at me? I'll continue later." Chapter 2058. Qing asked hesitantly, "What did you mean by what you said to me earlier?" Of course, Gu Xingyin knew what he was asking. But now, she wanted to be naughty. "Ah. What did you say?" Xiao Qing felt a little embarrassed. "You said that if it wasn't me, it was another man." Gu Xingyin blinked and said, "Exactly what I said." Xiao Qing scratched his head. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, looked at him with amusement. She wanted to know how long he could hold back before he spoke. Xiao Qing's other hand on the table couldn't help rubbing his wrist. To be precise, he was rubbing his watch. This was his habit. When he was nervous or thinking about a problem, his body would subconsciously do this. Xiao Qing looked at the girl opposite him. There was a faint smile on her exquisite face, and her big black and bright eyes were looking straight at him. Her gaze seemed to be filled with encouragement. He suddenly had an epiphany. The hesitation and nervousness from before disappeared in an instant. He looked deeply into Gu Xingyin's eyes, but the words that came out of his mouth stunned her. "The first time I saw you was a year ago." Gu Xingyin was surprised. Why didn't she know about this? Xiao Qing seemed to have completely calmed down. He relaxed his body slightly and leaned against the back of the loose and soft chair. He looked at Gu Xingyin and smiled. "At that time, I happened to go to Xia City to play and saw you at the entrance of a middle school. I only saw you once and hurried back to the capital." I've been serving you for nearly a year and a half. I haven't been to Xia City again, but I haven't forgotten you. The smile on Gu Xingyin's lips deepened. This reaction made Xiaoqing happy. He told a secret that he had never told anyone else. Actually, 2 days ago, you saw me at the airport. It was I who had arranged the things in my hands and was about to go to Xia City to look for you. Gu Xingyin's eyes widened. Xiaoqing smiled. He seemed a little embarrassed, but his eyes were shining as he looked at Gu Xingyin. I want to find the girl I've only seen once but can never forget. I want to see her, I want to ask her. He looked at Gu Xingyin, and there seemed to be a galaxy in his eyes. I want to ask her if she has a boyfriend. Gu Xingyin asked, what do you want to do now that you know the answer? Xiaoqing smiled. If she doesn't have a boyfriend, I'll apply for a job. If there is. I refuse to accept this possibility. Gu Xingyin was amused by his domineering and willful words. Facing the man's expectant gaze, she pretended to ponder for a while and finally said, well, since you're so handsome, I'll allow you to take up the post. It was only at this moment that Xiaoqing's heart finally settled down. He said, Yan Yan, is it okay for me to call you that? Does your family mind that you have a boyfriend now? Gu Xingyin only glanced at Xiaoqing. I'll be 18 in a year. What do you think? Xiaoqing. Well, to be honest, he just wanted to go to his parents-in-law's house as soon as possible and settle their relationship. After talking about it, the awkwardness between the two of them seemed to have disappeared. After dinner in a pleasant atmosphere, Gu Xingyin thought of that man. She asked, by the way, you're from the capital. Do you know a person named Xiaolong? Chapter 2059. Xiaolong. Actually, Xiaoqing really knew him. But he was not sure if the Xiaolong he knew was the same person as the one Gu Xingyin talked about. If they were the same person, how could Yan Yan know such a person? Gu Xingyin saw that Xiaoqing didn't speak, so she thought he didn't know him. She said, it said that he's a gangster. If you can get in touch with him, Xiaoqing asked, do you know him? There was a hint of disgust on Gu Xingyin's face. I met him last night. Xiaoqing suddenly became nervous. Are you okay? Why didn't you tell me that you met him? He had heard of Xiaolong's reputation, and he vaguely knew that this person was cruel and fond of beauties. In a short moment, he imagined a scene of a bully flirting with a girl. Gu Xingyin shook her head to show that she was fine. I'm fine, but it seems that that person won't let it go. Xiaoqing looked cold. Don't worry, Yan Yan. I'll deal with Xiaolong, don't worry, he won't pester you anymore. Did he mean that he would make Xiaolong suffer? Gu Xingyin thought that if Xiaolong took her away so early, what would happen to Su Jiao? She quickly stopped him. If you have the ability, ask someone to warn him and teach him a lesson. My sister, Su Jiao, seems to have a good relationship with him. She didn't say anything more than that. Sister. Xiaoqing remembered the girl with coquettish makeup he met on the road earlier. It seemed that she should be the sister that Yan Yan mentioned. In this way, the characters of the two sisters were really a little different. Out of concern, he still reminded her, Xiaolong is not easy to deal with. Yan Yan, you can mention it to your sister. Mention it? Gu Xingyin thought that even if she reminded her sister out of kindness, Su Jiao would probably only think that she was jealous. She said with a cold look, there's no need to remind me. My relationship with Su Jiao is not as good as you think. You don't have to do anything for her. She didn't mind exposing some things in front of Xiaoqing. They were going to be together for the rest of their lives. There were some things that didn't need to be hidden. Seeing this, Xiaoqing felt strange, but thinking about it, there were many examples of sisters in big families who didn't get along well, so Yan Yan's attitude wasn't strange. Wasn't that girl also unhappy when he asked her questions earlier? Thinking of this, He nodded. Then I won't interfere in her matters. He vaguely sensed something in his heart, but he didn't say anything. Before knowing what had happened, no one had the right to interfere with the decisions of others. Gu Xingyin didn't know what Xiao Qing did. Anyway, from then on, the man called Xiao Long really didn't come to find Gu Xingyin. Based on Gu Xingyin's understanding of that man's vicious character, this was almost impossible. She didn't ask about Xiao Cheng's family background, but Xiao Qing didn't seem to have any intention of hiding anything from her. The imperial capital, surnamed Xiao, had great power. Almost anyone with a brain would be able to connect these things together and obtain a terrifying message. So it was that family. If she guessed correctly, Xiao Cheng's grandfather should be the old man who often appeared on the central news in the early years. If that was the case, it would not be strange for Xiao Qing to be able to make Xiao Long obedient. Chapter 2060. Time passed again. Gu Xingyin was admitted to the first university of the imperial capital with first place in Jisuo. And Su Jiao was also admitted to an ordinary second-rate school in the imperial capital. What surprised Gu Xingyin was that Su Jiao actually got along with the man called Xiao Long for 2 years in a relationship that was neither close nor distant. And it seemed that they had real feelings for each other. Not long after Gu Xingyin entered her first year of university, it was her 19th birthday. On the day of National Day, she was dragged back to the Xiao family by Xiao Cheng. According to Xiao Cheng, the entire Xiao family had long known about her and had always asked Xiao Cheng to bring her home to meet them. However, Xiao Cheng had hidden her too well. This time, they finally met in person. When the two sides met, they had a good impression of each other. A family like the Xiao family had an excellent family upbringing. It was impossible for them to have unruly plots like those in some TV series. On the contrary, they were quite satisfied with Gu Xingyin's appearance and speech. When they heard that she was a student of the first university, their impression of her improved a lot. At the end of the semester, Gu Xingyin also brought Xiao Qing home. Their eldest daughter brought her boyfriend home. This was a very shocking thing for the Su family's parents. Mother Su was fine. Father Su was very picky about Xiao Cheng, but he couldn't find any fault with Xiao Cheng's behavior. As for Xiao Cheng, it was only after the Su parents finally showed their approval of him that he revealed his identity. The two elders were dumbfounded. Although they were considered rich and their families had a lot of connections in the political world. But a family like the Xiao family, which truly stood at the top, was in the core circle that ordinary people had no way to set foot in. However, this wasn't what made Father Su excited. Old Master Xiao. That was his lifelong idol. Xiao Qing never thought that his grandfather was not only the umbrella of the entire Xiao family, but also played such a huge role when he met his future father-in-law. Father Su's attitude towards Xiao Qing changed 108 degrees. After dinner, he even dragged people to the study to discuss old Master Zhao's great achievements. Mama Su looked at her daughter helplessly. "That's how your father is." Gu Xingyin smiled and said nothing. No matter what, this result was something to be happy about. Although she couldn't give up on her lover no matter what her family's attitude was, getting the support of her family was the best result, wasn't it? Su Jiao's school holidays were later. When she returned home, she heard the news that her sister had found a boyfriend. Su Jiao was a little surprised. As far as she knew, Su Jian was the kind of person who only cared about learning and challenges. She was so outstanding that no boy could compare to her. Su Jiao had once viciously speculated that a woman like Su Jian would be like some doctorate professors in university, an old woman in her 30s who wore old-fashioned professional suits every day, had a house and a car, but was still an old virgin that no one cared about. When she occasionally thought of such a possibility, she even felt a little happy in her heart. So what if you're outstanding? If I don't like studying and can't get into a good school, I can still live a carefree life. In comparison, you, Su Jian, are simply a pitiful worm. Chapter 2061. But in just one semester, Su Jian had a boyfriend? Father Su and Mother Su naturally wouldn't talk about Xiao Cheng's family background casually, but from their reaction, Su Jiao could see that they were satisfied with Su Jian's boyfriend. A boy who could catch Father Su's and Mother Su's eyes must be good in all aspects. Su Jiao felt unbalanced again. She always felt that Su Jian was doing it on purpose, wanting to be ahead of her in everything. However, she had never thought about the fact that she had dated countless boyfriends over the years. It wasn't that there hadn't been a man who loved her wholeheartedly, but Su Jiao was greedy for fresh excitement and finally got tired of it after a while. It was her own decision not to bring her boyfriend home. How could she blame Gu Xingyin for this? It seemed that there was a saying that was right: when you didn't like someone, no matter what they did, you could see the shadow in them with narrow-minded eyes. Su Jiao was like this when she looked at Su Jian. On this day, Gu Xingyin was reading on a wooden chair in the garden as usual. The summer in Xia City wasn't too hot, but it was definitely not friendly. Sometimes, when the sun wasn't so hot, Gu Xingyin would walk out of the air-conditioned room and sit under the vines to cool down. She thought about it carefully. On the first day she came to this world, she seemed to have sat in this place in the same posture. In the blink of an eye, such a long time had passed. Su Jian. A clear voice called her name. Gu Xingyin narrowed her eyes and looked at the person walking towards her. In the past 2 years, the relationship between the two sisters had become colder and colder, and they couldn't even be bothered to maintain the harmony on the surface. For example, they called each other by their names as if they were strangers. Su Jiao's expression didn't look too good, but she still said, "Jingnan and the others have a party tomorrow night. Do you want to go with us?" Jingnan. Gu Xingyin thought for a while and shook her head. No. She grew up with the two sisters when she was young, but after junior high school, she became estranged from Su Jian. However, she had a good relationship with Su Jiao. Both of them were famous for their playful personalities. It was easy to imagine what kind of activities they would have at their gathering. Su Jiao bit her lip. If it were her, of course, she would not be willing to invite Gu Xingyin. However, Jingnan also invited a few handsome men and beautiful women. Some of them heard that Su Jiao had a sister who went to the first university, so they all urged her to come over. Su Jiao was also drunk at that time. She said on the spot that her sister listened to her the most. As long as she asked, Su Jian would definitely come. As for how much he regretted after he woke up, that was a matter for the future. In short, in order not to lose face, Su Jiao straightened her neck and invited Gu Xingyin. Obviously, Gu Xingyin did not intend to give her face. "Su Jian, just do me a favor. Tell me what you want," Su Jiao said. Gu Xingyin glanced at her and snorted. "What do you think is worthy of my attention?" Su Jiao's face was livid. Gu Xingyin felt that she had not provoked her enough and continued, "Also, Su Jiao, what kind of dirty things are in your so-called gathering? Mom and Dad don't know, but don't think that I don't know." She didn't hide her disdain at all in her tone. "You have the face to invite me? Su Jiao, I find it dirty for you." Chapter 2062. Su Jiao's expression changed. She couldn't help raising her voice and looking at Gu Xingyin. "What do you mean?" She thought that she had been in the capital for the past few years, and she didn't act as ostentatiously as before. Her family was far away in Xia City, so it was impossible for them to know what she had done. Su Jian was deliberately scaring her, wasn't she? She snorted and said, "I know you look down on me, Su Jian. It's fine if you don't want to play with us, but why do you have to speak so harshly?" Harshly? Gu Xingyin seemed to have heard a joke. She suddenly stood up, approached Su Jiao, and said softly, "Do you really think that the campus hunk in your school, the man named Xiao Long, and the man in the bar called Blue every month can really hide from everyone's eyes?" She looked at Su Jiao indifferently, and her face suddenly turned pale. Gu Xingyin said, "Su Jiao, you can rest assured for the time being that Mom and Dad don't know about this, and I don't intend to tell them." Su Jiao's eyes lit up, and then she had some doubts. She didn't believe that Su Jian would be so kind. Gu Xingyin said coldly, "I'm not a saint, and the little sisterhood I have for you has long disappeared. The reason why I didn't tell Mom and Dad was that I didn't want them to be sad because of you, and I wanted to threaten you with this." Su Jiao's eyes widened because of Gu Xingyin's words. It was the first time that she had heard someone say the word threat so confidently. "What do you want?" Su Jiao's tone was much more polite because she had something on her. She knew very well that Mom and Dad didn't like her behavior. If they knew that she still couldn't change her style when she was in the capital, Su Jiao didn't want to think about what would happen to her. Maybe her angry father would directly take away the shares that he had intended to leave for her. Gu Xingyin glanced at her and said, "What I want is very simple. Don't jump around in front of me in the future, and put away that bad idea in your heart." She looked at Su Jiao, who seemed to be very indignant, with a mocking expression. "Don't play tricks, Su Jiao." She stretched out a hand and waved it gently. "When I said those words, you should have known that your life has always been under my control." Su Jiao suddenly raised her head and looked at her sister. The Su Jian in front of him still looked calm and gentle, innocent and harmless. Su Jiao thought absent-mindedly that she had always been deceived by her. She had always looked down on Su Jian. She felt that Su Jian's life was boring and she felt that Su Jian was very silly. Now that he thought about it, wasn't he the foolish one? When he went to provoke Su Jian, did she always think that he was an idiot in her heart? Su Jiao turned around and left silently. Gu Xingyin looked at her back and thought that if she still had some brains, she probably wouldn't bother him anymore. She was right. Su Jiao didn't provoke her again, nor did she lose her temper with her. From that moment on, the two sisters had truly become strangers who had never interacted with each other before. 3 years later, Gu Xingyin graduated. The elders of the Su family and the Xiao family met, and the relationship between them was officially established. Chapter 2063. At the engagement party with Xiao Qing, Gu Xingyin saw Su Jiao, whom she hadn't seen for a long time. She seemed to be having a good time. She was dressed very delicately, and she looked much more charming than before. The man named Gu Xingyin stood beside her in surprise. "Xiao Long, she brought Xiao Long to my wedding, could it be that the two of them had developed from lovers to a real couple?" Gu Xingyin was a little curious. After all, whether it was Xiao Long or Su Jiao, neither of them had the temperament to stop for someone. It was hard to imagine what the future would be like when the two of them got together. However, she only thought about it for a moment and then gave up this idea. Not to mention what would happen to the two of them in the future, it had nothing to do with her. The increasing involvement between Su Jiao and Xiao Long was very much in line with her own wishes. Su Jiao was spoiled, and Xiao Long was surly and difficult to get along with. The two of them would probably torture each other for a long time. "What are you looking at?" Her hands were covered by a pair of warm hands, and Xiao Cheng's gentle voice appeared in her ears. Gu Xingyin was stunned for a moment, then she came back to her senses and shook her head with a smile. "Nothing." She held the hand of the man beside her. She just needed to live her own life. What did other people's lives have to do with her? After the elder daughter got engaged, the younger daughter, Su Jiao, also brought her boyfriend back to meet her parents. Father Su and Mother Su were not at ease when they saw Xiao Long's appearance, but Su Jiao insisted that she liked him, and as parents, there was nothing they could do. Su Jiao still beat Gu Xingyin, her elder sister, on something. For example, marriage. Xiao Long didn't have parents. Su Jiao, who had always been willful, got married to him almost immediately after obtaining the consent of her parents. After that, she lived in the capital with her husband for a long time. Gu Xingyin also lived in the capital, but the two sisters had never met each other. Gu Xingyin finally knew why the two of them got married. It was really ridiculous. Because after marriage, Xiao Long and Su Jiao still played their own games. A proper couple would actually go to a bar together. The husband was looking for a lover, and the wife was having a one-night stand. Both parties didn't seem to mind at all. What was even more outrageous was that the couple would occasionally play with others. Gu Xingyin's worldview was refreshed. In the past, she had always thought that such an unreasonable plot would only appear in porn. She had never thought that such a thing would actually happen in front of her. It was really disgusting. What was marriage to these two people? Because of this, Gu Xingyin no longer paid attention to Su Jiao. She told the system not to tell her anything unless something big happened to Su Jiao or if she wanted to harm her. Another year passed. Gu Xingyin and Xiao Qing finally got married and became a real couple. Less than half a year after their marriage, Gu Xingyin became pregnant. After October, she gave birth to a pair of twin girls. When she was so tired that she fell asleep, Gu Xingyin seemed to hear the system say something. She opened her eyes again and found that her body had been cleaned. Her lower body was very clean and refreshing, and her husband, Xiao Cheng, was looking at the two cradles beside him and smiling. Yen yen. Seeing her wake up, Xiao Cheng smiled with satisfaction. Thank you for making my life perfect enough. He leaned over gently and kissed the corner of her forehead. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.